Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the NXTGEN Racing European GT3 Series Season 2, as hosted on the PC version of Assetto Corsa Competizione in collaboration with the SimGrid and coach Dave Academy. It's round 7 of 8, and we have got a cracking race ahead and plenty more racing action to come in the series that has continued to deliver the drama and deliver the battles from day one. Now, of course, tonight's broadcast is being brought to you live on 3 different media platforms, depending on your choice of media. Whether it is on YouTube, you can tune in using the NXTGEN Racing official YouTube channel, on Facebook, on the official NXTGEN Racing Facebook group, and also, last but not least, if you're inclined to use Twitch, you can tune in using twitch.tv/TX141, my own personal Twitch stream. On screen right now, you can see your schedule for tonight. In approximately 14 minutes' time, we will be getting underway with the driver's briefing, the pre-race driver's briefing, in order to take our drivers through all the do's and don'ts and the additional rules that may be in place tonight. And then 5 minutes after that, so at 7:30 at British Summer Time, or your UTC +1, we'll be getting underway with a 15-minute qualifying session to determine who will be on pole for today's race. After the 15-minute qualifying session, we go straight over to the race itself, the feature race, the 75-minute race, and then after that, we will of course be bringing you the post-race podium interviews with our top 3 finishers. Now, of course, in the commentary box tonight, you'll have myself, as always, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain as Fit, depending on what media you follow me on, and it's great to be back in the final quarter now of the series, and indeed, what a series it has been so far. But before we come on to recapping what happened last time out at Oulton Park, let's just take a very brief moment to say a few words about our principal sponsors, without whom it'd not be possible to bring you this series. So starting off then with the SimGrid, a little bit about the SimGrid. Who are they and what do they stand for? The SimGrid is a place for amateur and professional sim racers to compete against fellow drivers in leagues and endurance events for Assetto Corsa Competizione. Indeed, if you are on the PC version, or alternatively, if you've recently picked up R Factor 2 as well, because the SimGrid has now expanded to cover R Factor 2, if you're on either of those racing platforms, it is the case that you can use the SimGrid to meet with and race with like drivers, whether they be professionals, alternatively amateurs, or rookies. It's the case there's something for everyone there, and you can take part in a number of both free and paid series, and indeed the SimGrid puts on its own series as well. It's not just a hosting platform for other series, but they also put on their own series from time to time. And with the upcoming More Female Racers series as well, a major series which has been pushed throughout the year, and we look forward to seeing more about that. But that is the SimGrid, and in terms of their involvement with us, they've been supporting us in running this series in terms of hosting it on their website, but not only that, also helping us out with respect to the stewarding. We've got one of their professional stewards on board as part of our stewarding team, and it's great to have them with us. Meanwhile, secondly, we have Coach Dave Academy. Now, a little bit about Coach Dave Academy, the home of amateur and professional sim racers looking to up their game through coaching, setups and track maps. So whether you're looking to gain a tenth of a second, a whole second, or just find a setup for the car that's more comfortable for your driving preference, Coach Dave Academy is the place to go to know even more about how you can best set up your car in Assetto Corsa Competizione to achieve what you're looking for. And on top of that as well, they've recently expanded their itinerary to include iRacing setups. So if you are an iRacing fan and tuning in tonight, or you take part in iRacing and Assetto Corsa Competizione, there could be a little bit there for you as well in the world of iRacing. Now, in terms of Coach Dave Academy's involvement with us, they have been supporting us in putting together the major prize pool that we have for this series. I believe each race winner is being given a free Coach Dave Academy setup bundle, and on top of that, there's a number of prizes available for our top 3 finishers come the end of the season, as well as their engraved trophies. But more about that come at the end of the season, of course. But those are our 2 principal sponsors, without whom we'd not be able to run this series, and we're very grateful to have both the SimGrid and Coach Dave Academy on board. But coming away from our sponsors then, to the calendar. 6 rounds complete. 2 to go. It's the 19th of October 2021 today, and we are at the French circuit of Paul Ricard for what is expected to be a rather oddball round. Now, why do we say it's a bit of an oddball round? Well, we'll come onto the nature of the circuit Paul Ricard track very shortly, and why it's a circuit where we're not sure what quite to expect, to be honest, compared to the previous 6 rounds, where there's been a predictable sense of form, or at least we'd expect certain drivers to be right up there at the front, or certain cars to be up there. And last time out, of course, we were at Oulton Park. 7 days ago, on the 12th of October, we were at the final final British circuit on this calendar, and my goodness, did we have a race that sprung up some major surprises and some huge shocks at the British circuit. And really that translates onto our championship standings, with the fact, as you can see now, going into the round at Oulton Park, Andrés Mesa, our championship leader, and still our championship leader, the Spaniard for Distinct GG in the Aston Martin Racing V8 Vantage, he was leading by a reasonable gap of somewhere in the region of 6 to 7 points. That gap now is only a point, with the dramatic finale of the race seeing Andrés Mesa finish P4 in the end, meaning he wasn't able to pick up a podium position, and that gap between himself and Harry Phillips has condensed considerably, with Harry Phillips conversely there in P2 in the standings in the Bentley Continental GT3 for what is Wild Things Racing, picking up the win and closing that gap down. On top of that as well, you can see in P3, Ralf Piringer there on 371 points, picking up the third place at Oulton Park in that last-minute battle between himself, last-minute battle, I should say, between himself, Kieran Prendergast, and also Andrés Mesa in the battle for P3, and Kieran Prendergast not able to close that gap up to the leaders as rapidly on 344 points, but still a P6 in the end, giving him some good points, and he will be looking to bounce back as much as possible tonight and get himself right out there on the podium, if not in the overall win, because he needs the points right now to hunt down Ralf Piringer come the season finale. There in P5, the one big name that really stood out at Oulton Park, Markus Fox, the Austrian in the Porsche 911 GT3, putting in an absolutely phenomenal performance at Oulton Park, going for the strategy which saw him finish P2 in the end by not changing the tyres, whereas other drivers chose to change the tyres at Oulton Park, but Fox went all in on a single set of tyres and was rewarded with his first podium finish of the series, putting him on 343 points and now only 1 point off of Kieran Prendergast. Indeed, it is the case, the Briton being hunted down right now by the Austrian, and will those two come to blows tonight at Paul Ricard? Outside of the top 5, we have Paco Lara there in P6, really our leader in the best of the rest outside of the top 5, albeit it was the case that last time out Paco Lara not able to pick up the best of their results, with one of their weaker results on the calendar, a P9 matching their P9 at Silverstone in round number 5, and it is the case this has opened the door to Martin Ullrich to close up slightly to Lara with respect to the fact that Ullrich was able to pick up the P5 with Kieran Prendergast having to go into the pits right at the end of the race at Oulton Park due to damage picked up in the freeway battle with Piringer and Andrés Mesa in the battle for what was P4. Also P3 I should say. But when we look back at that, we do reflect on the fact that in the end it was the case that Ullrich was the major beneficiary with everything that did happen, and as a result now with a gap of what is 24 points to close down to Paco Lara, can we see Ullrich potentially achieve that tonight? In fact, I can't even do maths, ladies and gentlemen, it is a gap of what is 14 points, not 24 points. There we go. Outside then of the battle between Ullrich and Lara, we do have Rainer Evenstedt at the moment in what is P8 on a total tally of 263 points, and whilst he's quite a way off the back of Ullrich, he does have a 13-point advantage over Fabio Chiena, but we are expecting the P9 driver to come charging back tonight, and could we see Chiena do a phenomenal job in the Aston Martin Racing V8 Vantage. And then hold on to the last of our top 10 spots, of course, is André Jacquelin, the Slovenian, who on 234 points with what was a very difficult race at Oulton Park, only able to pick up a P20 in the end towards the back. Can Jacquelin revert the loss of form and get himself another top 10 result in order to be able to give himself some space to the chasing pack? As we look outside the top 10, the first of our drivers in the chasing pack still in this series is Anthony Brownell, or Ant Brown as he likes to be known, the McLaren 720S driver. On 232 points, so only 2 points now off of Jacquelin, and after that P8 at Oulton Park, backing up what was a strong P6 at Silverstone, you can imagine that Brown will be really on the heels now of Jacquelin and trying to get himself into that top 10 going into the season finale. Meanwhile, Christian Ablas are there in P13, the further part of 30 points down, and he is being chased very rapidly by Paul Scott at the moment, and it is going to be a great dynamic between those two, and do not count out Walter Knox either in P15 or Emil Blaine in P16. Gareth Mills, unfortunately, in P17 will not be racing tonight. As a result, we will be expecting the South African driver to drop down the order somewhat, but hope to see him back at the Nürburgring. And then we do have a bit of a gap to Eduardo Trippiano there on 189 points in P18. But one thing is for certain, if you throw Trippiano and also Chris McKenna into the mix, and Daryl Kolgoski, to be fair, in P20, we do have a major pursuit on at the moment for P13 in the standings, effectively what we'd expect to become P12 when Ethan Faulkner does drop down the order, as we have had the retirement of Ethan Faulkner from the series. He's still on 204 points, of course, not picking up any more points as he's no longer participating. But the hunt for P12 and being on the heels of Ant Brown is definitely something which we'll continue to see today at Paul Ricard. And as we go down to P21 through to P30, so looking looking at our top 30. We then do have Robert Velkoski on 173 points in the Porsche 911 and eager to make an impression on getting back into that top 20. And you can imagine that Velkoski, after that P25 at Oulton Park, will be looking to seize an opportunity and get a firm result inside the top 20. Max Maliar there, P22 on 160 points. A very difficult race at Oulton Park, seeing him finish only P24 and in. And it has been one of those seasons where he's had a couple of highlights, but he's had to turn around a bad run of form every so often. And can the second of the Jochen powered by BMW drivers be able to do so tonight? Lucas Seedor there in P23, keeping Maliar honest, however, a 3-point gap. And I do unfortunately have to announce that we have seen the retirement as of tonight. I had it confirmed just before we were going racing today. I've had the confirmation that Adrian Leusinger there, our P24 driver, will no longer be taken to the circuit for round 7 or the season finale in round 8 due to a number of hardware issues with regards to his sim racing equipment. But we do hope to see Leusinger return as of a future season of NXTGEN Racing on Assetto Corsa Competizione. So we wish Leusinger the best, as we always do, but it will be the case we will no longer be seeing his V8 Vantage take to the circuit as of tonight. Sylvain Pastoris, as a result, will have a great opportunity to get into P24 tonight on 127 points currently, but he does have to watch out for Jesse Monrose in P26, who will be looking to put that pressure on. And we can see there, of course, Gaz Williams in P27, who, having not made the start last time out at Oulton Park, can we expect him to be back tonight and inside that top 10, having made a very firm impression with only 2 races on the board, a P4 and a P8. Looking further down there, Timofeo, Brandon Warren and Nestor Mejia rounding off our top 30. And as we look to P31 to P40, a good number of these drivers, of course, being drivers who have retired from the series in some shape or another. But we do have Andrés Zafarotas there in P31, looking to get some more points on the board tonight, potentially, after what was a reasonable performance at Oulton Park, a P17. And then we can see there in P35, Marco Ticini. And we do hope to see Ticini return to the circuit today at Paul Ricard. And as we continue to wind down there, we look to outside of our top 40. And again, we can see the 3 drivers who have retired from the series: Ali Al-Sarge, also Simon Huber and Alwyn Reid. Now coming on to our circuit, of course. Today we are in Le Castellet, Var, France, for what is Circuit Paul Ricard. We are using the GT World Challenge layout, of course, and that is the one that consists of 13 corners. Now this circuit, based on the image as provided to us by Human Body Piloter 5 from wikipedia.org, it is a circuit which has a bit of a reputation for being one of those circuits which you either love it or you hate it. And I think the reason for that is because it's a circuit which is made to be as much of a race circuit as it is a test circuit. There is something here to test every aspect of the car, and what it means is when you're setting up the car at Paul Ricard, there is no one way to go about it. Now, to elaborate, 13 corners, the first half of the circuit is effectively all about low speed handling, or at least from turn 3 through to what is turn 6, it's all about low speed handling, but you also do have some significant camber changes and bumps in the road, particularly through turns 1 and 2. But after you completed the first half coming out of turn 7, you have got a phenomenally long straight, the longest straight we've got on the calendar, coming up to somewhere in the region of 2 kilometers of straight, which is all about just being able to max out the top speed of your car, and that's where you want to get rid of some of the downforce. But of course the difficulty is, if you aim to max out your top speed on that straight, when you come into turn 8 in the second half of the circuit, you can see from turn 8 all the way round to turn 11, we have got corners designed for high speed and medium speed cornering capabilities, and they're all trail braking corners from turn 9 through to turn 12, and that is going to test a completely different aspect of the cars. Whereas in the first half of the circuit it's all about heavy braking force, it's the case that in the latter half of the circuit it's about trail braking and rotation under application of the brake, and that's what's going to make this one so difficult to predict. We do have our championship favourites, of course, but we do think it is going to be a difficult one to know who is going to come out on top. Now, rule-wise, we are running the Balancer Performance, the base one that's featured in Assetto Corsa Competition on PC, the base 2020 variant that's been used for all cars in this series. There's no additional success ballast or anything along those lines. And as for the race itself, we still, of course, have that mandatory pit stop, which will require 1 litre of fuel to go in the car, but changing tyres is entirely optional for our drivers. And there is no defined pit window. Our drivers may choose when to pit. Now, with that, we only have about a minute to go until we do have the driver's briefing. So we are very quickly going to hop into the driver's briefing room and now start to listen in to, well, what we're waiting to hear from our steward. And that is, of course, Kieran Smith, as we just make our way into the room. So we have just made our way into the driver's briefing room. Of course, you cannot see this because this is on what is a Discord server that's off screen. But what I can tell you right now is we are just waiting for Kevin Smith to walk into the room and shut the door behind him effectively, as we've got all of our drivers in the room right now itching to hear what he's got to say. Any moment now, he's just arrived and he should be giving us the lay of the land and all the rules any second now. And that gives us a brief moment, folks. I think Kevin may be just grabbing his notes together and giving our drivers 1 more minute to all crowd into the briefing room. It'll definitely be any moment now, folks. Here we go.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back for round 7 of NXTGEN Racing's European Championship. So, a couple of things to go over tonight, guys. There was one incident submitted last week between car 8 and car 19. It is a warning to car 8 for aggressive driving, as they do move across the front of the 19. So I will write that up for you as well, guys, so you have a visual to go and look back at. In regards to tonight's race, we are expecting it being a dry race throughout. We are not expecting any rain at all tonight. In regards to pit entry and pit exit, so as we all know, the pit exit at Paul Ricard is very short and directly onto a fast straight down the start-finish line. We would like all drivers to ensure they are behind the white line when entering and exiting the pits. Please do pay attention to your relative and your mirrors when coming out of the pits as well, because the last thing we want is 2 drivers battling it out down the straight and someone comes out the pits and we have an incident. And of course it's going to ruin races for several drivers if that happens. Of course, you can make your pit stop whenever you wish, and tyres are optional. 1 litre of fuel is required though to make this successful. And apart from that, everyone, I believe that is it, other than what we've already covered over the past few weeks, which is all known. And if anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat. If not, you are free to leave the room, and good luck, everyone.
So hearing there from Kevin Smith, who's just given us the rules and also talking about an incident between car 8 and number 19, which I believe was an incident between Nesta Magia and Eduardo Tripiana at Oulton Park, but that has now been clarified. So as a result, as we come to the live cameras, we now only have the best part of 2.5 minutes before we get to go racing. And what I can tell you is that so far in this final practice session, as we are building up to what is expected to be a fantastic race, it is Harry Phillips, the Wild Things Racing driver, who has taken the fastest lap in this final practice session, albeit the practice session is one thing, the qualifying session is an entirely different thing. We don't know if that was done using heavy fuel, low fuel, a particular setup which he might be experimenting with, where he's going to be having his qualifying setup in this practice session, and Andrés Mesa, his championship rival, of course, and our championship leader right now, who is obscured a little bit by Martin Ulrich's M Technology machine, but as we look to the helicam, you will be able to see there we do have Mesa just parked in behind him. Is the case that our championship leader is only 1.5 tenths off of Harry Phillips as we do wait to go racing. We've got 20 drivers here today. We were expecting somewhere in the region of 20 to 22 of our 30 or so field to be arriving at the circuits. We've got a plentiful of drivers. We've got a good number of faults from our drivers as well to talk to you about as we look to get going. But it is the case that right now everybody just twiddling their thumbs and getting it ready to go. You can imagine that nervousness, although we do have Paco Lara deciding to head out onto circuit here and just getting some final warm-up, going through turn number 8 there, and we'll take you for a lap of the circuit, of course, in the qualifying session as we build our way through the qualifying session. But one thing is going to be notable at Paul Ricard, as well as the fact that you've got those multicoloured lines which could disorientate some from the helicam view. This is a circuit which is going to put our drivers through their paces considerably, and there's no identical corners here. It is the case that each corner presents its own unique challenge, and there's some rather ruthless track limits here in some corners which will cause your car to get pushed out towards the track limits, and you'll have to counter for that. And we can see we've got a whole mixture in terms of practice times right now, with a Bentley taking the fastest time, the former Harry Phillips, then an Aston Martin taking P2, then Walter Lux taking that P3 at the moment in his final practice session, Ulrich taking that P4, and Markus Fox taking that P5. We've got 5 different cars occupying the 5 top spots there in practice before we get our first repeated car of an Aston Martin in P6 in the wonderful, capable hands of Emil Blaine, of course. But right now, with less than a minute to go, and as we continue to watch here, Lara just keeping us entertained whilst everyone else is sat at the pit. The tension is definitely palpable as Lara also parks up now, and it is the case as we look back to our pit lane. All of our drivers just waiting to go, itching to go, and we are definitely waiting for it as well. As we do see that the timer heads over to half past the hour, I do believe we are going to get the jump forward to that qualifying session any moment now. And whilst we are waiting, we're just going to check in with you guys and girls in the chat. We hope you're all doing well and you're having a good week so far. Well, the fact it is Tuesday today, we're 2 days into the working week. We can see Low Power 73526 there in the Twitch chat, and we're doing all okay there, Low Power. How about yourself? You're looking forward to the racing tonight, and also we'll address your comment about the point scoring system very shortly. And we can see there Kevin Smith and the guys of NXTGEN Ultra in the YouTube chat saying this championship is going down to the wire. It is indeed, Ultra, and it is the case that we are expecting a brilliant championship battle to continue tonight, of course, between our 2 main contenders, but also the hunt for what is the top 5 and the hunt for P12 in the championship. But here we go then, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for us to go racing as we clear the screen there of all the additional data and all of our drivers and make the way out onto the circuit right now. It's time for 15 minutes of qualifying, and you can bet your bottom dollar it is the case that Harry Phillips would love to take pole. He took the fastest lap of the final practice session, but it's one thing to do it there, it's another thing to do it in qualifying. Now, whilst all of our drivers are making their way out onto the circuit, I did have the opportunity to catch up with a number of drivers in the build-up tonight, and starting off with this man right here, Christian Ablasser, who respects the pit exit line there. Remembering that our drivers all got told that they need to obey the pit entry and the pit exit lines to the fullest, and also drivers out on the circuit who are battling on the way towards the start-finish straight as they come out of turn 13 and coming down towards turn 1, do need to be aware of the fact that drivers will be emerging from the pits on that line. Or behind that line, I should say. I had the chance to catch up with Christian Ablasser, the TG Racing Esports Green driver, and it was a great opportunity to speak to the chap. In fact, it was the first time I'd had a chance to actually catch him as he was trying to make his way into the car, and the Aston Martin racing driver was saying to me that after being unlucky in the last 3 races, where he's always found he's had bad luck in the first laps, he does not want to take any risks at the start today and just focus on consistent pace and then maintain his position overall in the standings. So Ablasser this time looking to rectify what's happened over the last 3 races where he's had those unfortunate starts and he's had to try and bounce back from them and instead just focus on a consistent race. So I definitely think that is going to work very well here at Paul Ricard, because of the fact you've got such a variety of corners, and indeed the track evolves significantly over time, particularly the amount of rubber being laid down, and if we do see a temperature change or a bit of wind start to crop up on the horizon, it will make some of these high speed corners, particularly turn 8, a much more tricky corner to deal with, and the trail breaking into turn 9 here as we see Ablasser getting ready to go for a lap. Now, another driver I had the chance to catch up with was the Distinct GG driver of Chris McKenna, who we can see here in the Bentley. The British driver making his way down towards turn 9 right now, just warming the car, not pushing it to the limit there on the exit of 8, staying well inside the curbing there, where you can run all the way out to the edge of the curbing and beyond, as long as you do not hit the signposts which tell you to come back onto the circuit. And what McKenna was saying to me in the build-up to tonight's race is that he thinks that Paul Ricard gets a lot of bad rep with the fact it's boring due to the narrow straight, but he thinks that the rest of the track is very technical and there are usually plenty of overtaking opportunities to be had around the track, so he's looking forward to that. And on top of that, the first sector of the first lap usually spells carnage too, so I'll be on the lookout to avoid any potential incidents, says Chris. Now, on top of that, he's still after his first top 10 finish in this series. It's been elusive so far, but he'd be very proud of it considering the calibre of the drivers in the field and his previous results being around the P20 mark. And it was the case that he was on course for a potential P10 or a potential top 10 at Oulton Park, some of you may remember, until it all went horribly wrong at Oulton Park towards the midpoint of the race, and there were a number of mistakes and moments where he just started to fall away, or in his own words, to have thrown away a definite top 10 at Oulton Park last week after a couple of unfortunate incidents that led to major damage on the car. But hopefully his Bentley will be squeaky clean this week and he can push for that top 10. And what he's also saying to me is that he'll be on the radio comms with his teammate Andrés Mesa throughout the evening and cheering him on as well to another win, hopefully, and to extend his lead in the overall championship. And there's no doubt about it, Andrés Mesa will want that win tonight, so that way he can give himself a bit of a points gap to Harry Phillips come the finale in a week's time. Now going from Chris McKenna to another driver I had the chance to speak to, and one of the drivers who was right in the thick of it at Oulton Park, it was Nestor Magia here. We can see the Rasket Racing driver making his way through turn 8 in the Aston Martin racing machine right now, just getting himself onto his first flying lap and building up a little bit of comfort and a little bit more knowledge about the track in terms of the conditions right now and how the track has grained in, as we do see the track conditions are currently optimum. There's a good amount of rubber that's been laid down thanks to the practice session prior to qualifying. And what Magia was saying to me in the build up to tonight is that he feels that this is a more forgiving track than last time at Oulton Park, but equally challenging as well. Low levels of downforce and that long straight mean it'll be difficult to keep the tyres in the sweet spot, making them easier to get grain in. He does expect a lot of people to change tyres in this race, and after a good result at Oulton Park, he definitely was right up there in the battles at Oulton Park. He hopes to carry the momentum to the final 2 races and look for a top 20 finish again at Paul Ricard, and to keep learning more towards the next season. So Magia looking to the future in the long term, not just in the short term. As we can see here, we do have a bit of a situation where he does have the Porsche there of what I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, is Velkoski. And in fact, it was the case with GM moving out the way of Velkoski, the back to motion driver very close behind there and feeling that he had the momentum. And it looks like Magia's just decided to back out of it and miss turn 1 entirely and then rejoin on the run into turn 3 with some clear air. Quite a sensible decision, I think, when you've got quite a bit of crowding out of the circuit and you've got ample time in the qualifying session. Now going from one driver who's up and coming to a driver who really made his mark, and he's making his mark so far in this qualifying session with a provisional P3 so far, 1.4 seconds off of our provisional pole time as set by Andrés Mesa at 53.241. It is Markus Fox here, the Fox Sim Racing driver, as he makes his way into the tricky turn 8 here, all the way through the high-speed apex in his Porsche 911. And what Fox was saying to me in the case, well, no, he wasn't saying to me anything, I'm afraid. It's the fact I've got his name mixed up with somebody else, but I can imagine in that cockpit right now he's going to be feeling quite excited for tonight's racing, and on top of that it will be one of those situations where he will be looking to replicate that podium finish from last time out at Oulton Park and give it everything he can. But we'll have to wait and see whether the rather ferocious Fox is able to pull off something special, or will he become the fantastic Fox if he is able to do it again. But from one driver who I did have the chance to catch up to, now that I've just double checked, it was Emil Blaine, the NRT Nordic Racing Team driver here, as he makes his way on down towards turn 8, where you can see him here charging all the way down. And what the Dane was saying to me in the build up to turn 9 was that last round at Oulton Park was a big disappointment for him. He had great pace, but he made a stupid mistake on lap 8, got some damage and couldn't get his tyres back up to pressure again. So he had to pit for new tyres, which wasn't part of the plan, and still a P11 finish is good, just super bummed knowing that his pace was worth much more. And indeed, it's the case that after picking up with that brilliant result well inside the top 10 at Monza, Blaine really has been on fire and has been full of excitement. Indeed, down in the paddock, when you walk past the pit garages, I can tell you, whilst it's quite lively in all the different pit garages, every race he goes to, and we'll play in the pit garage, it is just absolutely lively. It's almost like a carnival in there in terms of the amount of excitement they have, and the driver does indeed have for the upcoming races. And the number 664 driver here, as he comes across that timing line to set his first lap of this qualifying session, we believe that sets him at provisional at P11 on what is a lap time of 155.854. It was the case that Blaine was saying to me that this week he's really been looking forward to Paul Ricard. He likes the circuit, he thinks it's a fun track with a good flow, and something that an absolutely enormous back straight speaks to him. In fact, he loves that back straight running from turn 7 to turn 8. Indeed, in that Aston Martin Vantage V8, you can imagine that V8 is going to absolutely roar in his capable hands, as it's going to be a goal tonight of getting as deep inside the top 10 as possible. He thinks he's got a good shot if he can stay out of trouble on the opening laps. As we continue to look around the field, and good to hear from Blaine, of course, one last driver who I did have the chance to catch up with, and he is putting in a phenomenal performance in this qualifying session so far. And indeed, the tables are turning. You can see the 2G Racing eSport McLaren 720S there in the hands of the capable Austrian of Walter Lux. He goes a bit wide there, going into turn number 8. Now, the McLaren driver currently provisional P2. You may be asking the question at this point as he runs off there, going into turn 9 to avoid holding the drivers behind him up. Is it the case that this is going to be a little bit of a shock in the tail? I definitely think so, because when I had the chance to catch up to him, what Lux was saying to me was that he feels as though he's improved a lot over the course of the championship, and his pace for the McLaren 720S is getting better and better every race, and we have seen that, and he's slowly understanding how to drive the car fast. Now, in terms of tonight itself, he's learned a lot from the mistakes he's made, and whilst he hasn't had too much time to prepare for Paul Ricard, which is a new track for him, he has a goal in the last 2 rounds, and that is a top 5 finish. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, Lux has put it out there. He is looking to upset the table in the top 5 and put himself in that top 5 at least once. Will he be able to do it? Well, based on this qualifying pace so far, it is definitely looking highly possible. He's currently provisional P2, 4 tenths off of our provisional pole sitter of Andrés Mesa, and with 6.5 minutes to go right now, you can imagine that delta there between Lux and Phillips of 3 tenths. That is not a very easy delta to close down, though Phillips may have something to say about that, but Lux is definitely setting himself a good target, and he's definitely on his way to achieve that target based on just this qualifying session so far. Those are all the drives we did have the chance to catch up with in the build-up to tonight. Great to catch up with our drives, of course, and as we continue to look around right now, it is the case that with 5.5 minutes to go as our drivers make their way on through, it's Andrés Mesa who's currently on pole, but we still do have at least 3 more laps in this qualifying session for most of our drivers, as we can see our provisional pole man right now making his way through what is their turn number 9 and up into 10. And what we will do very shortly for you, ladies and gentlemen, is we'll ride on board Andrés Mesa as he takes us around for a lap of the Paul Ricard circuit, and we'll call out all the different corners and what you can expect to be happening in each corner. So as we jump on board right now, let's take our way through turn number 12 and into 13. To the end of the lap, a slow apex here, coming all the way down to first gear in some cars, other cars second gear, powering out of the corner. And I mean, it's the case he's actually pulling into the pit, so he's not going to give us that opportunity. That's no worry at all. We will find another driver who's coming to that, and here is Martin Ulrich, and we'll jump aboard the M Technology machine, who also comes into the pits. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. It seems as though we're picking the wrong time for our drivers to give us a quick tour of the circuit, as we just see Markus Fox right now making his way on around down towards turn number 3. And as we continue to look around, we can see Walter Lux here gearing up for what is likely to be, I would suspect, at the end of a qualifying lap. And as we jump on board the McLaren driver, he's going to carry on through, so here we go. So coming out the final corner then, and building up all the way through the gears here, heading up towards turn 1, crossing that timeline, a left-hander here, you'll see it's a left into right turns 1 and 2, using the full width of the circuit, braking hard and trail braking down into 3rd gear onto that apex, and swinging the car from left to right here, aiming to clip the apex curve but not get too unsettled by it, so as to run out and full throttle on the exit, and now building up the speed once again in the run down towards turn 3. A major overtaking opportunity here as he looks at 100-meter board and breaks into 3, trail braking into the apex of 4, and as he comes through here a little bit wide off the apex of 4, but he recovers the car to take an aggressive line into 5, but he does go a little bit deep there, and as he comes through 6 here, gently on the throttle, and as soon as he feels he passes the apex, he'll be full throttle through 6 and into 7 here, the left-hander, which takes you onto the long straight. Now it is the case that we just have to listen to the tones of the McLaren as it charges along. Now at this point, of course, whilst he's making his way down, he will be thinking about setting himself up for the tricky turn 8 in terms of nailing his turning point. All the way up into top gear, getting ready. He'll be looking for that 100-meter board, 50-meter board, and turns in here. One downshift, goes a little bit wide, however, there, but it's one downshift. And as he comes out of the corner, it'll now be up into turn 9. A long trail braking right hand here. The corner with the apex that never seems to come. And then there's the apex right there, a late apex. And as he makes his way out the corner, he's now coming up into turn number 10 here. Another trail brake corner coming all the way down to 2nd gear and looking to take it as late as possible on apex there, and then stamp on the throttle on exit. He makes his way through the right hand and out. Well, in fact, he's cooling the tyres down. I think the tyres have gone a little bit in the rear end unsettled, but as he comes through 11, now into turn number 12, and now starting to build the apex speeds down as he comes up towards 13, the final corner here, and as he makes his way through the right hander, giving us a tour of the circuit and a relatively fast lap, but of course not the perfect lap from Lux and having to back it off, but we appreciate it all the same from the McLaren driver, who's currently P2 and doing a good job with 2.5 minutes to go. And we can see the McLarens are coming out in force, with P3 currently occupied by Paco Lara, who is only the best part of 600ths off of Walter Lux. And the Spaniard here, well, we were wondering what he's going to be able to do at Paul Ricard, and it does look as though in qualifying this is a very strong performance so far from the Prototype Racing Team driver, and if they can keep this up, Harry Phillips will be starting from the 2nd row. As we do see there, we have had the arrival of Gaz Williams. He's just arrived at the circuit, which is great to hear. He may be getting in the qualifying lap, but if not, he'll be starting from the back of the field in P21, and that is going to be a last 2 top 10 challenge for him. I would suspect that would be his goal, as we see Paco Lara coming across the line and goes up to P2. Does the Spaniard right now, 3 tenths of Andrés Mesa, and Mesa right now, I think, feeling comfortable. That has been the fastest lap all qualifying session, really, after the first round of laps, the 53.2, but Lara finding finding some time out there, 53.5, and Walter Lux, the best part of what is only a little bit further off right now, a further 10th of Alara on a 53.6, and it's Harry Phillips right now, who you've got to say he must be thinking about the race now more than qualifying, because this lap, in terms of being 7/10 off, he may be able to find some time out there with one more qualifying lap after this one, which is coming to the end of very soon. And as he comes out the final corner here, can he improve and get himself back onto that front row? He would want to be up there, of course, and he'll want to upset the apple cart in terms of Mesa feeling comfortable. And Phillips does improve to a 53.8, but it's not enough to get him out of P4, as we do see that Piringer right now in the BMW M6, the one car we'd expect to be very strong on the straight, but struggle perhaps a little bit more in the corners. And Piringer was saying to us in the build-up to tonight, he wasn't looking forward to this one. You'll remember in the post-race interview at Oulton Park that I think he did, if I remember correctly, describe this circuit as somewhere just to park the car rather than a race circuit. But Piringer right now in P6, and I think it may be a day where he's just going to have to try and salvage some reasonable points, as we do see his teammate Max Maillard just behind him right now, currently P10. Maillard enjoying this circuit a little bit more than his teammate. Maillard's normally qualified in the lower portion of the top 20 or outside the top 20, but you can see the 404 driver, the number 2 car from the Orange Fires, powered by BMW team, doing a very good job right now, and I think the two of them nose to tail here. Could it be the case that Piringer might have sacrificed his qualifying lap to give his teammate a little bit of slipstream or a distant toe down? And you can see that, in fact, he has backed it off on the apex. This is to give a toe. Now, I'll tell you one thing, ladies and gentlemen, these cars, when they go down that straight without a toe, they're going to be hitting somewhere in the region of about 170 miles an hour. But you can see here, as they make their way on down, it's going to be the case that Maillard now, in that slipstream, will be building up the speed to almost 180 miles an hour as he goes all the way down. You can see there is the case that it's Piringer moves out the way as they head all the way up, as that's massive overspeed now he has to deal with into the corner, into the long straight, coming into turn number 8 right now as he goes on through. Oh, goodness me, and we can see there it's the case. He's gone a bit wide, Maillard, and it's Piringer who slides through the corner, and it's gone horribly wrong for Maillard. Way too much speed, and that has not worked out. But meanwhile, for Andrés Mesa, who's currently making his way through turn 8 here, could he be pushing even higher, as we see Sylvain Pastoris is in P8 right now? And will it be the case that Andrés Mesa raised the bar into the 52s, or will it just be enough in a 53.2 there, as we see Elmore Blaine goes up to P10, is 1.6 seconds off of pole. And then we've got Rainer Effenstedt here making his way on through, as well as he comes up through what is turn number 10 there, I believe, as he comes on through the left-hander to go through 11 right now. We'll wait and see. We've got more times coming. Gaz Williams has set a time and gone P7 on his one and only time of 54.4, which is a good lap for someone who's just literally arrived at the circuit late. So we're going to have our 21 drives take to the circuit rather than just 20. But if Effenstedt comes out the corner, it's no improvement as he comes into the pits. What about Paco Lara? Can Lara improve? No, they're into the pits as well. Andrés Mesa has crossed the line to improve to a 53.0, surely putting this qualifying session out of reach of everybody as Harry Phillips is into the pits. It is Andrés Mesa who takes pole position, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get ready for the race. So as we look back to the live screens right now, we can see our grid formed up based on qualifying, and a brilliant pole lap of 53.0 from Andrés Mesa. Again, asserting why he is the championship leader right now. Even if it is just by a point, it has been that raw, ferocious pace which has given him that lead, and he's not looking to give it up any time soon. And as we look in board the car right now, it is the case you can imagine the Spaniard from the Distinct GG Racing team will do everything he can today to take home that win and make sure he's got the best possible placement going into the final round at Nürburgring in a week's time. But right now he will be focused only on getting that launch at the start and making sure he's able to consolidate that position. Meanwhile, joining him on that front row, and this is the first time we've seen Paco Lara qualify on the front row in this series, it is the case the Spaniard right now, what can they do in the McLaren 720S? Could this be a good opportunity for Lara to pick up a podium here, which would be fantastic given that Lara's form has continued to rise over the course of the series, starting off in battles for just outside, if not just inside the top 10, and more recently been battling for the top 5 almost, and now this is a great opportunity to achieve another top 5 finish, if not their first podium. And the same for Walter Lux, who further down in P3, we can see looking on board right now the TG Racing Esport driver. He'll be thinking, I think, in two minds about whether to go on the offensive versus the front row, alternatively just try and hold on to that P3. Will he be able to do that as we look further down the field? And we can see Harry Phillips there alongside Lux in P4, and the Wild Things Racing driver today. I think this is going to be one where he's going to have to think quite deep about the race and just look at how he can manage this one and pull off a surprise. But further down there, we can see down in what is P7, we do have Gaz Williams there in the Bentley, in the purple Bentley, as he looks to go racing from the full throw here. In the case of the number 90 car, turned up quite late to the racing, but still able to put in a good qualifying lap and get himself alongside Markus Fox there on that full throw. And you can imagine for Williams, he'll be looking to see how far he can go. Can he get himself up into that top 5? Can he even hunt the podium? That'll be all the questions going through his mind. And then rounding off our top 10 in the end, just pipping Emil Blaine into the top 10 was Rainer Effenstedt there, the TG Racing Sport driver from Austria, doing a good job in qualifying. And will he be able to make his way up towards Walter Lux, of course, his teammate? Could we potentially see two McLarens from the TG Racing Esport team inside the top 10 or even inside the top 5? We will have to wait and see. We've had to wait some time to see the McLaren really come alive, but we are starting to see the 720S do very well, and now it's the case. It's a great opportunity for McLaren here as we look a little bit further back. Emil Blaine, of course, P11. Then we have Max Malliard there with one of his season best qualifying sessions and qualifying in P12, not able quite to hold on to that P10 in the end, but the Jochen Schweizer powered by BMW driver will know there's a great opportunity from P12 today, and the straight line speed of that BMW, its acceleration out the corners onto the straight, will be what he will want to exploit in order to be able to hold on to that P12 and go hunting after Blaine, Effenstedt and Pastorius ahead of him. And even further down the order, we look on board right now with Andrew Jacklin, the Slovenian, who will be thinking at this point for Food Point Racing, what do I have to do to get myself back inside the top 10 and get some good points? It's going to be a challenging race for him, but we will wait and see what he's able to pull off there as he gets ready to go. 1.5 minutes now until we do get our rolling start underway. As we just look back to the front of the field right now, we can see a lot of drivers there just popping the car up on the jacks to make sure that the tyres have got the highest possible temperatures before they finally take the blankets off, and they will be going once again here as we just do wait for that countdown. And looking all the way to the back on what is the final couple rows, we can see Chris McKenna in the end not having the best of qualifying sessions. As we look to the helicam, we can see Chris McKenna there from Distinct GG in P18, but he will be thinking more about the race and gradually building up those places to go for that top 10. He's going to have his work cut out for him, but we do know McKenna, a very consistent driver when he can get his head down, and of course he is joined on that row. He joins what is Eduardo Tripiana there in P17, and looking right towards the back, we do have Andrés Zafratos, who's starting at P21, and can the Frenchman find a way to get inside that top 20 and charge all the way up towards the top 15? All questions that will be revealed after 75 minutes of racing, and we are just waiting for that final 30 seconds. The call is in, and all of our drivers will now be putting the cars down onto the tarmac and looking to go charging away. And it will be this man, Andrés Mesa, who takes us away at the start for the manual double file rolling start. One lap of the Paul Ricard circuit to try and get those tyres up to temperature as much as possible, and also the brakes. And as he'll come out the final corner, we will go on the green, and it will be the Spaniard who takes us away for our 7th round of this 8-round championship. And the stakes could not be higher for Mesa. He has a golden opportunity, but can he pull it off as he begins to pull away from his grid box? As we see them all start to make their way off of the grid, we can see Markus Fox there in P8 just following Gaz Williams away, and Sylvain Pastorius with a great qualifying session here, and the Swiss driver from Rinaldi Racing should be given a major pat on the back for getting the Ferrari right up there, the highest Ferrari place today in terms of the overall standings here in qualifying. And what can Pastorius do? Normally he's found himself battling for outside of the top 10, but today he's well inside that top 10 in P9. And what can he do from there? Can he perhaps achieve his season best performance here, or will it be the case that he goes backwards down the field? Now, of course, we won't be wishing for him to go backwards, but I can imagine that Effenstedt, Blaine, Maliart, Kiena, and also Jacqueline and Monrose in particular, who we look at right now, Jessie Monrose from BSP Racing France, they will have something to say about fighting for that top 10. Indeed, the field could not be closer as they all just magically make their way down towards turn number 3 right now. And as they do come on down, they will fortunately have the ability for drivers to be able to clip through one another in this warm-up lap. They won't be able to do that in the race, of course. We will have completely solid cars, and it will be the case that if they try to do that, they will be making contact, and it will be race over for both drivers involved in that contact. But right now, as they all make their way around, they come through turn number 7 ahead onto that straight, and as we look all the way down towards Ablasa here in P19, and as we ride on board with the Aston Martin driver here, not the greatest of qualifying sessions, but he will be thinking more about the race now, thinking what can he do from here, and be looking in particular most likely, I would say, at Chris McKenna, knowing that McKenna has got quite a bit of pace underneath that Bentley, and perhaps trying to synchronise himself to McKenna. Or could it be the case that Ablasa is able to make an early gain and try to get ahead of the Bentley driver? And also Trippiana, well, we'll have to wait and see, of course, as they continue to make their way on down right now, just warming up those tyres as much as possible. Heating the tyres is the name of the game. We do have an ambient temperature of 17 degrees centigrade, a track temperature of 23 degrees centigrade. We're not expecting any rain today. We do have a lot of cloud over the circuit right now. No real wind to talk about either, so it should mean that with regards to going through the high-speed corners, particularly through turn 8 and coming into trail braking for turn 9, the car should be pretty steady through those corners. But you can imagine if we do have a bit of wind come over the circuit, that could change the dynamic of those corners in particular quite completely. And it is the case that all of our drivers now will be chomping at the bit with one of the longest warm-up laps, one of the longest double file manual double file rolling start laps here. It's one of those situations where everybody just wants to go charging, wants to go racing right now. But first, to get to the start of the race, you of course must warm the car up as best as you possibly can, and they will all be in that mode, that mental mode of making sure they get it right. As we can see here, Lara just making his way down and looking at an opportunity, I reckon, to try and take on Andrés Mesa come the run to turns 1 and 2, and how that would completely turn the tables if we saw a McLaren leading this race at the start. But of course, we can dream, Lara can dream. We will have to wait and see as they start to make their way up into turn 9 right now. And as they do, also coming out of turn 9 and into turn 10, I should say, it's one of those situations where Lara will be thinking about what can he do at the start. He'll now be starting to get himself ready, as we can see the field starting to bunch up as they make their way through 11 and up towards 12. And as they do so here, everyone's just going to have to be patient now and get ready to go racing. As we see Simon Pletz there in the YouTube chat saying that Lux is going to win. Well, we'll wait and see whether that prediction is correct, but that's a great prediction. But we now wait for Andrés Mesa to take us away for 75 minutes of racing at Circuit Paul Ricard. And it's lights out and away we go for round 7 of the European GT3 Championship, and Harry Phillips immediately going on the offensive down into turn 1. And as we look to the helicam, you can see Phillips already up into P2. Lux having a very difficult start there with Lara really unsettled, and Lux tapping the back of Lara as they make their way through the corner here. And we can see that Piringer dropping down the order as Gaz Williams goes around the outside into turn 2. Markus Fox finding himself sandwiched behind the Colossus is the BMW M6 as they come roaring down towards turn number 3. But looking back up towards our leaders, we can see it is the situation whereby Phillips has gained 2 places at the start, and further down here as they concertina their way through 3 and 4, we've got contact. Jacqueline being tapped on the back there by what looks to be one of the Porsches. I think that's Velkoski as there's further contact, and Velkoski is sent for a spin there as they make their way on through, and that's a disaster for the drivers as we see that Nesta Majir there and also Chris McKenna taking evasive action as they come back on towards the run to turn 7. But meanwhile up front you can see that Andrés Mesa leading right now as they come roaring down the straight for the first time of asking, and then he's got Harry Phillips right there behind him as both of the McLaren drivers, Lara and Lux, have had a disaster start, particularly Lara, who seemed to be nowhere. And as we look further down here, you can see it's the case that we have got Lux, who's under a bit of pressure from Ulrich, but further back we've got Williams versus Fox, and Fox trying to go round the outside here as they make their way through turn number 8, and I don't know if Fox is going to be able to rejoin in time. I think he's just about to back it off, but behind them we do have Emil Blaine, who's holding off Fabio Kinner and Robert Velkoski. My apologies, that was not Velkoski in the instant earlier. That was one of our other Porsche drivers, but we can see Velkoski still there, battling with Kieran as they make their way in towards turn number 10 as they come up towards that left-hander here. It is the case that Kieran has lost the position to Velkoski as they make their way on through turn 10 and into 11 right now, but this has been a very, very feisty start for a number of drivers, and Velkoski now right on the charge and going after Blaine, as behind we can see Maliar, who made some ground at the start, has now lost that ground, and Jacqueline with that contact early on, he's got the car back up and running as they make their way through turn at number 13. But after one lap, it is Andrés Mesa leading by only about 6 tenths of a second ahead of Harry Phillips, and followed with 2 tenths of a second. In fact, as we see, they make their way into turn 1. Then it's Paco Lara in P3, who's chasing after our leaders, followed by Walter Lux in P4. Then we've got Martin Ulrich in P5, who's got Ralf Piringer all over the back of him in P6. There's Gaz Williams in P7, having made that early gain versus Markus Fox in P8. Then we've got Sylvain Pastoris in P9, holding firm, holding on to P9 as the Ferrari driver. Then we've got Rainer Effenstein, who's also held on to his starting position in P10 as Emil Blaine looks to go on the offensive here. And you can see the Nordic Racing team driver not able to get in the move, but a little bit of snaking under braking into turn 3 there. I'd say he's got the brake bias pushed towards the rear of the car slightly to try and get it to turn in a little bit more. As we can see, Robert Velkoski in P12 right now. It's the Porsche driver who is really the next member of the pack right now, and the next pack that's formed. As we can see, he's trying to break away, and we do have Maliar versus Jacqueline here as they come through 7, and now it's all about the slipstream down the straight here, and you can see right on board here with the Slovenian of Jacqueline as they make their way all the way down. It's BMW versus Aston Martin as it's the two V8s going toe-to-toe. Of course, you've got that massive twin turbo there as well in the form of the M6 versus the raw guttural power of the Aston Martin, and you can just see how that BMW is able to pull away. Jacqueline does not have a response on the straights as we look back to the exterior cameras right now, and they come roaring up towards turn 8 once again, and as they make their way into the corner, no change, but it does seem as though Jacqueline, if he's going to get the move done, he's got to get down the corners. Oh goodness me, that's Jesse Monroe's almost having a major moment coming out of turn 8 there. The rear of the car just not steadying, instead deciding to wobble back to the inside of the circuit, but a good catch by that man, and the BSP Racing driver down in P16 and lost the momentum there. As we look a little bit further up, and we see Rainer Effenstein here has dropped down to P12 as Emil Blaine's up into P10. Volkovski's got ahead. I'm not sure if there was contact, but I think Effenstein's had a bit of a poor run there through turn 10, and as a result has dropped positions as they make their way on round, and we can see behind Velkoski here trying to put some pressure onto Emil Blaine, but behind him it is the case that Kiena right now really trying to build up the momentum as well, but that is not the case. That it's Effenstein right now who's trying to get onto the back of Velkoski and go on that offensive, but will he be able to or not? That's the question. I do think that Kiena is, whilst he would like to get some pressure on the guys in front, as we look at the Aston Martin driver in P13, I think he's got to keep his attention pointed elsewhere right now. He's got to look behind him as Maliar is doing everything in his power to stay firm behind the Tamiya Racing driver and doing a good job. But meanwhile, as we look back up towards our leaders, we can see our top 3 have come together. And as we ride on board here with Andrés Mesa looking back, the distinct GG driver who's got Harry Phillips and Paco Lara all over the back of him, you have to imagine this is not the way that Andrés Mesa will have wanted the race to start, in terms of the fact we saw the two McLarens seem to trip over one another, particularly Paco Lara just did not seem to have the start that he wanted, and Phillips with an absolutely colossal start with the turbo, of course, that Bentley and the low RPM torque, just able to get behind the Aston Martin driver as they make their way up towards turn 8 once again. Now, it's a long run up the straight, but you can see how the Bentley just lacks that top end speed compared to the Aston Martin. It's getting there very gradually in the slipstream, but it's the slipstream that's giving it the ability to close up as Phillips drifts there into the corner into turn 8, and Phillips there having to save the car. And I think now Andrés Mesa may be aware of that, as we see in the rear of your picture Walter Lux battling here with what is Piringer into turn number 9, and as they make their way on through, Lux was ahead only moments ago, but Piringer's gone for the move. They're side by side coming out of 9 up into 10, and as they make their way on through, we can see Ulrich in the rear of your picture there also trying to get into the mix, and it looks as though Piringer has found a way through, and Lux has lost the position for the time being, but you can imagine he will come back rather rapidly here. He will know he has got the pace to be ahead of that BMW. It's not a case that he got lucky in qualifying, he got there on merit, and he will now try to bring it back in the number 530 car, but I think Piringer will have other ideas as they make their way through turn at number 13 to complete another tour of the circuit, to complete their 3rd lap, and as they come across that timing line, I can tell you it is the case that right now our leaders lapping in the 54s and everybody else in the 55s or lower as they make their way on through, and as they come down towards turn at number 1 once again, we can see it's now Ulrich who's on the offensive here versus Lux as they come on through, and it is the case that the Mercedes driver here, well, he's had a subtle start. He's now making a bit more of an exciting one in terms of he's trying to gain some more places here as the AMG machine proves very strong in these race conditions as he comes up into turn 3 once again. But you can see their Lux able to gain massively under trail braking there into 3 as they come through 4 and up into 5. And this is where the BMW struggles so much, is in these low speed apexes. But watch as they now come through the sequence of 6 into 7. You'll see as soon as Piringer can see that he's going into turn 7, he will now really absolutely clatter that throttle pedal and hope that he's had enough to be able to get away. And I think that BMW will give him the safety, but Lux is still close behind. He's only 2/10 off here, and having that 2/10 distance is enough to have the tow to be able to stay right there and look for the move up into 9 as they make the way on up. Of course, it will be the case that Lux will lose the front end downforce due to the dirty air off the back of Piringer's car, but as they continue to roar up the straight here and the camera switches round, we can see they're looking to go toe to toe once again as we see Pastorius versus Blaine as well. There's no change between the two of them, or is there? Lux has to back out for the time being, but meanwhile Blaine, he was battling with Pastorius up into the corner. They're still side by side into turn number 9, and as they make their way through, it's the case that Blaine has passed Pastorius this time in the drag race up to 8, and the two of them went side by side, but it's the case that Pastorius now has to look for a move back through in the battle for P9 as he looks to the outside inside, and Pastorius goes way too deep under braking, and Velkoski looks to seize the opportunity. There's a bit of door-to-door there as they make their way out of 10 and into 11, and I think it's the case that Velkoski was thinking that Pastorius would rejoin behind him, but Pastorius has got other ideas as the Swiss as they make their way through 12 and into 13, but Velkoski has got the move for P10, and it's the case that Pastorius has lost 2 places, and he's now got Eifenstedt and Kiena behind him as they make their way down towards turn 1 once again, and this is in the battle, of course, for P10 effectively, with Emil Blaine already trying to make his break and run away with it. Will he be able to? Well, we can see here Pastorius is looking vulnerable to Eifenstedt, but Eifenstedt's just trying to fake the move right now. He's not going for it. He's trying to get into Pastorius' head and say, don't look at the guys in front, look at me, as we see Velkoski there getting a little too high in the apex curve of turn 2. You just want to clip it slightly, go too high and you'll feel the rear of the car jut out, and that's exactly what's happened to the back to motion drivers. We can see there both Pastorius and Eifenstedt having the same idea of going for the move versus the vulnerable Velkoski, but it was the case that by doing so they both stepped over the top of one another, and as they make the way out of 5 here into 6, Velkoski is going to be very vulnerable in the run down the straight, you have to imagine, as they look back from Velkoski's car right now, and you can see how really it's the case the guys behind have all had quite poor runs out of 6, and this is going to buy Velkoski a lot of time as they make their way down towards turn number 8 here, nowhere near as close as what we thought they would be, but meanwhile up front I can tell you it's the case our leader makes his way into turn number 8. It's a situation whereby he's got a gap of 1.4 seconds over Harry Phillips, and Phillips, you could just see that after that little moment earlier on, he's no longer as confident about us running as close to the back of Andrés Mesa. I'm wondering if he's perhaps been disturbed by the lack of downforce where he was running the dirty air of Andrés Mesa's car into turn number 8. But meanwhile, further back, we can see that Piringer leading our second pack right now as the field has started to open up after what is 9 minutes of racing. It's the situation where Piringer is now in that P4 position. He does have Lux and Ulrich hot on his heels, but Ulrich is really starting to build up some momentum here. He's just as fast as Lux and Piringer, and he'll be doing everything he can to keep them honest, as we've got Gaz Williams just behind as well, and the M Technology driver of Ulrich will be wary of the fact that Williams and Fox are inching ever closer to the back of this battle, and we could be looking at a 5-way battle for P4 as things currently stand, as they all make their way to the end of lap number 5 and go on to lap number 6 after 10 minutes of racing here as they come roaring down towards turn 1, and we can see in the rear of your picture there, it's Emil Blaine who's holding on to that P9 for now. He's got the sizable gap, as meanwhile it's Sylvain Pastorius here in P13 who's all over the back of Fabio Chiesa as they make their way down towards turn 1, and we can see it's this time Maliot's going to go for the move. They're going to make it 3 wide, but it's the case that under braking Kiena's able to hold the line, but Maliot looks the inside to outside here, and Pastorius backs out and goes a little too high in the apex curve of 2, which confirms he cannot carry the momentum through, and Maliot with a brave move there has made his way up into P13 as they come roaring down towards turn number 3. Now as they make their way down, the 404 driver at this point very heavy on the braking there in that BMW, and I think he might just be struggling a little bit with the position of the car right now. Perhaps the brake temperatures are a bit too high, but you could see there how the car was squirming onto the apex of turn 4, and I think it might be the case he's just cooked the brakes a little bit too hard in order to get that move done versus Pastorius, but he will now have a very long straight in which to cool them down. But of course he does have Fabio Chiesa only a second up the road, with 9/10 of a second, and that dirty air, that hot dirty air coming off the back of that Aston Martin may say something else about cooling his brakes as he makes his way down the straight here And as we look a little bit further back, we can see Jacqueline just watching on from P15 right now, probably thinking, okay, I've got to find a way past Pastorius, who seems to be going backwards rather than forwards. Can I do it? That's the big question. Well, I think he can, as we just saw there for a brief moment. Effenstedt all on the defensive here versus Fabio Kina as they make their way down into turn 9, and you can see how Effenstedt's able to carry a bit more momentum into turn 9 compared to the Aston Martin behind him. More confidence on the apex turn in there by comparison with Kina as they make their way up towards turn number 10. And it's a situation right now with the TUG Racing Esport driver where I think he'd love to go hunting down Volkovski, but he just doesn't have the ability to give himself a break from Kina, and that's the problem right now. Fabio Kina is just too strong in the first half of the circuit, and it means that Effenstedt has to go defensive every time, or worry about going defensive. And also through these medium speed, these third gear corners, we can see the McLaren does not seem to be as happy in Effenstedt's hands as it is compared to some of the other McLarens, and Kina is able to exploit as we see a 5-second penalty for Volkovski has been assigned. And of course, we do have to check in with our stewards, and we will confirm what that penalty is for very shortly, as our stewards are just informing us right now. Give us 2 seconds, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be able to tell you the story about that one. But whilst that's happening, I can tell you in the battle for P4, it's still Piringer who is leading, but Walter Lux is all over the back of the BMW driver here. And after what was a rather disrupted start, I can imagine that for Lux right now, he might be getting his head back down and thinking, okay, you had a rough run. In fact, he's going for it. As we can see, Piringer's gone very deep into 6. He's gone for the outside to inside for 7. And as they make their way on through here, I think Piringer's done this to try and make Lux lose track position, and indeed Lux has had to back off the throttle, and this leaves him very vulnerable to Ulrich, who's going to look to go on the left hand side here. This will be the outside for turn 8. It's a drag race between McLaren and Mercedes. The two cars very strong in building up through the gears, but the Mercedes seems to have a little bit of a lackluster edge there as they make their way up towards turn number 8, and you can see Ulrich tucking back into the slipstream. And as they come roaring along the straight, it is the case that Ulrich's looking for it, or is he? No, he backs off. Now, I think in this case for Ulrich, it's one of those situations where he needs to wait for an opportunity, because if he tries to go for the move now versus Lux, what he does, he buys Piringer time to break away, because we are seeing that Piringer is having to drive in a very particular style now to try and keep Lux at bay. And what he did there through turn 6 and 7, it's entirely legal, I should point out. He made it so both himself and Lux had to go too wide through 7, with Piringer taking that inside line. And there's only one way through 7, and it is on that inside line. And then Lux had to go wide, and to rejoin the circuit without breaching track limits, of course, he had to lift off the throttle to do so, and there wasn't enough space, of course, so that's why Lux lost out that momentum there. And that is what Piringer's trying to do. He's trying to make that BMW so wide it's not worth passing it. It's something he's done multiple times. We saw it last time at Oulton Park, how strong his defensive driving was in the BMW, and he'll be doing that again today as we see the battle for P4 rages on as Chris McKenna's into the pit from what was P21, making a very early pit start. I think McKenna might be going for a strategic call here. In fact, I think he was up in P16 when he pitted. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen, that may not be 100% accurate in terms of the place I just called out, but what we can see that right now Ulrich is starting to feel some pressure from Gaz Williams, as it's the case that Markus Fox has dropped into the rear of your picture, the Porsche there. The Fox Sim Racing driver just not able to keep with the pace here of the battle for P4. Or could he be saving the tyres? Could he be working up a magic strategy? That's one thing we have to consider as we now come on to 15 minutes of the race complete by the time these guys get down towards turn 8, and we still have an hour to go. Now, with regards to that 5-second penalty for Robert Volkovski, what was it for? It was a case for a push to pass on car number 11, and that was the car of Rena Effenstedt. We did see some contact earlier in the race, and this was contact that happened on lap number 2 at turn number 11. We didn't quite see that on camera, I don't think, but Volkovski has been caught out by it, and the stewards have told him it's a 5-second penalty, which he'll have to serve before he's able to service the car in the pit. But meanwhile, we look back up and we can see Gaz Williams making the move on Ulrich here as they make their way to turn 8, but he wasn't able to find it. But he's going to have a lot of momentum here down to turn 9. You see Ulrich goes defensive there, and Williams has decided time is of the essence here. He needs to strike in the Bentley and take the fight to Ulrich. Can he do so? Of course, that's the big question. Well, not right now, but of course Ulrich will now be very wary of the fact that he has a very eager Bentley behind him that is starting to size him up, and that means Ulrich will now start to fall off the back of Lux, which in turn will buy Lux a bit of breathing room here to go after Piringer, and Piringer will not be happy with this, because he will only now really see Lux as his major threat, and he won't be able to back Lux as easy into Ulrich and get Ulrich to fight for him as they make their way through turn 13 and go on to another lap very shortly. Meanwhile, further down the order, I can tell you that the battle for P12 has calmed down to an extent, with Fabio Kina right now in P12, Max Malliot the best part of 1.3 seconds back off of him, and as a result right now it's starting to enter a little bit of a breathing room territory for our drivers in the battle for just outside of the top 10 as they all look to focus a little bit more on their respective races races. We see Chris McKenna has come out the pits. He is in P20 run right now and focusing once again on what he can do after what has been a very difficult start. And Christian Ablasser, meanwhile, in P20, chasing after Eduardo Tripiana. It's only Chris McKenna who is a lap down on the majority of the field, and I think that was the major incident we saw at turn 5 and 6 on the open lap, and McKenna, of course, was right in the thick of that, and I think having to take quite a bit of evasive action and picked up some damage along the way as Ablasser goes chasing after Tripiana here. But as we look back towards our leaders right now, we can see it's a drive-through penalty for Nesta Magia. We'll talk about that in a second as to how that's come about. We can see Andrés Mesa, though, focusing on our leaders for just a couple of seconds, is holding on to a lead of 1.1 to 1.2 seconds over Harry Phillips, and we can tell you that on the straight here is the case that Aston Martin, when it's in clear air and Phillips has not got the benefit of a good amount of toe off the back of that Aston Martin, Mesa is able to open up the best part of 3 to 4 attempts down that straight alone. And I think it is the case that the Aston Martin driver here knows that, and he's now starting to exploit that. And also, having seen Phillips' wobble into turn 8 as well, it may be the case that Andrés Mesa is starting to feel a little bit more comfortable in himself. As meanwhile, we can see Paco Lara here keeping Phillips and Mesa honest. And in terms of lap times, it is the case that on that last lap, Paco Lara set a 55.3 compared to our leaders on 54.6s and 54.5s respectively. I'm going from Mesa to Phillips. But, well, in the previous laps, Lara's actually been consistently hitting 54. So one poor lap from Lara, and he's fallen back a little bit off of Phillips, but you can imagine he will try and push the wick. As the Spaniard makes his way down towards turn number 1, once again they go onto lap number 10 here, and it's 54.7 from Lara. Phillips at 55.1, Andrés Mesa at 54.4 is the case. These guys are exchanging lap times as if it's going out of style, and meanwhile Piringer doing everything he can to break away from Oulton Park. He's got a gap now of what is about 1.2 to 1.4 seconds as Lux is starting to fall backwards here a little bit towards Ulrich. I think it may be the case he might be trying to nurse the car right now and thinking about the wider strategy, because he's been chasing after Piringer for quite a bit of time, but it just has not worked out, the hunt for Piringer. Piringer's car is just too wide, or he's making it way too wide to go for the move here, and now Lux has to think about trying to consolidate that top 5. Because remember, his goal going into the last 2 races is to pick up a top 5 in one of the final 2 races, and if he was to finish where he is right now, he would achieve that goal. And I think he might be trying to think about consolidating that position. As much as he'd love to go hunting, he will also want to try and keep it as cool as possible and keep a cool temper, as we do see here that Simon Pletzer saying push Lux indeed. Well, I think that might have been a little while ago, but cheering on his favourite driver there, as we can also see in the YouTube chat, Ultra Gaming saying some great racing. Lux is having a fantastic race indeed. Lux is having a great race so far. I would be interested to see what exactly happened to Paco Lara, but unfortunately we can't give you that replay. But what happened to Paco Lara at the very start? It seemed as though Lara just got a box full of high gears, because he just did not seem to pull off the line at all, and Lux unfortunately got caught behind his fellow McLaren driver. But now they've settled down, they are doing a similar pace. It's the case Walter Lux that last lap of 55.8, Lara 54.7, so there's a 1 second deficit between Lux and Lara, but it is the case that Lux has come alive in this one, and he is doing everything he can. But you can see Ulrich, who we jump on board with right now, right there, we're right on board the dashboard here of the Mercedes driver, trying to close up to the back of Lux. But here's the thing, as we were saying earlier about the Paul Ricard circuit, it has a little bit of everything, and what we are seeing when we start to go through these corners, which require a lot of rotation in the car, the McLaren naturally has that mid-engine rear-wheel drive drivetrain. It naturally has that better rotation, whereas Ulrich, you can see how much he's fallen back. It's only really a tenth to 1.5 tenths he's fallen back coming out of the final corner, and on the straight here he can use the AMG's performance in order to close up. But that's the trade-off here, and why this circuit for some drivers is seen as a circuit not to want to race at. Others, it's a circuit they love because it is that contrast. You can't really have a setup which masters this circuit. You have to master the circuit just as much as the driver as you do the setup you run here. And Ulrich right now, we are seeing, is very strong in those acceleration zones, but as soon as it's a situation where it requires trail braking and managing that rotation on the car, Lux is right there. But we'll have to wait and see. Of course, these two drivers very evenly matched. They'll both want to pop at Piringer, of course, but as they make their way through turn 6 and into 10, you can see Ulrich, they're just struggling to get the rear end to settle that time, and that's cost him a little bit of time. He's still well inside the slipstream zone, however, so he will be able to pick up a little bit more speed on the straight here and close that gap back to Lux, who's brought it up to 7 tenths of a second, but you can imagine by the end of the straight it may drop down to 6 tenths of a second once again. But that is how close these guys are running right now in terms of that overall performance as they make their way down the straight towards turn 8. Meanwhile, Emil Blaine currently in P9 after everything is said and done. Driving very well right now is Blaine as he makes his way up towards turn number 8 here. We can see FSJ just behind him. And the next driver up the road from Blaine, of course, is Markus Fox, who's 3.8 seconds up the road. Blaine on that last lap of 56.5, Fox at 55.8. It does seem as though our top 8 are regularly in those 55s and holding on to those lap times. I think it could be a situation right now where really Blaine may be looking more towards holding on to P9 for the time being and looking out for this man right here. I can tell you on that last lap has set a 55.9 and I think is on course for another 55 very shortly. FSJ right now is pushing quite hard and I think he is trying to get up to the back of Blaine after breaking away from Keener. Fabio Keener down in P11 behind, not close enough, as we do see meanwhile here Velkoski, who has had Maliar get ahead of him. I should point out Maliar has got ahead into P12. We didn't catch that on camera, but you can see Pastorius looking for the move here into the final corner. He's gone for it on the brakes and Velkoski is giving him the space to do so, and it looks as though right now it could be the case that Pastorius now is back on the charge here, the Rinaldi racing driver, after what was a difficult start, dropping from P9 all the way down to P14. He's found some pace, or he's found a little bit of momentum, because he's now starting to exploit it. Next man up the road, Max Maliar in the BMW, a different car to overtake here. That Ferrari being right in the middle ground in terms of its overall balance and setup, we believe, but it is the case. He's gone past the handling car. Now he'll be going up against a power car, and can he pull off a pass? That'll be the big question that he'll have to answer as he makes his way there through turn 3 and into 4. But as he comes all the way through, we look further down the order and we can see it's the case that Nestor Magir here has cleared that drive-through penalty and now drops all the way down to P19. Now we are going to check in as to why he was given that drive-through. We have not had anything with regards to confirmation, so I do wonder whether that drive-through penalty may have effectively been for track limits, because we would have otherwise heard something from our stewards. So it is likely, as we see a drive-through for what is Paco Lara there, and Lara with a drive-through, and I'm not seeing anything in my steward inbox at the moment, so I think Lara there with track limits has been pinched with a drive-through here, unless I'm very much mistaken. But that is a disaster for the Spaniard. But what that does mean, of course, for the German and also Lux behind him, the Austrian, they will both look to gain positions, and the hunt is now on for Lux potentially to look at a podium here, with Lara being caught out with a drive-through. Now that, of course, as we were saying earlier on in the build-up, it is the case that Paul Ricard, the corners here, if you take too much out of the corners, you are going to be looking at a drive-through, or at least multiple track limit violations. But people are being caught out as we see Lara into the pits here for that drive-through penalty, and this is going to put them a long way down the field, because the field has not broken out enough yet to really make that drive-through painless. And we can see already Gaz Williams here in P3, where he's got himself past Markus Fox. He did that a little while ago. He's chasing after what is Ulrich right now. Fox has also come on through, as we see Lara's made his way through the kink in the pit lane, but it is the case that Fox here, and it's going to be all the way down, I think, down to somewhere around the region of P15-16 for Paco Lara, as Fox soldiers on. And then Emil Blaine right now will be thinking to himself, okay, well, if all the places can come to me like that, I'll be laughing, as he makes his way down into turn number 3. And behind him we can see Maliar being pursued still by Pastorius, but that gap has opened up to 8 tenths of a second. It's opened up by 2 tenths over the last lap, and it does look as though it's the case that Maliar right now just putting in enough to keep himself in contention for a potential top 10 as he makes his way on through here through turn number 6. And we can see the difference in body language of the BMW versus the Ferrari. We can see how with Maliar he has to take a much more gradual run through 6. Meanwhile Pastorius is able to close up, but as soon as they get onto this straight, you can see now how the BMW just deploys so much power down here. Meanwhile Sven Pastorius, by comparison, just not able to close up, and instead has to wait for that opportunity as he sees the BMW drive off into the distance for a brief while until they make their way up towards turn number 8 and into the high-speed right-hander. But that is, of course, the contrast of the cars and the balance of performance as being applied literally as you see on screen, in terms of the fact these two cars balanced in particular ways. And as they make their way on through, I can tell you a little bit further down here, we do have Andre Jacqueline, who's got Jesse Monrose closing up to the back of him here, and we see Monrose looking for the move there, but he's gone very wide. I think it was the case there that one of the two, I'm not sure which one, clipped the rearmost post there of the track limits boards, but we can see Jacqueline really struggling for rotation there into turn number 9, and then getting a ton of rotation as he put his 2 left-hand wheels outside the track limits. You are allowed to do that. You are allowed to run 2 wheels off the circuit there at turn number 9 if you feel it gives you better rotation, what it can do, and the fact that you lose the grip on the left-hand tyre, so the car wants to cut in a lot easier. But as we can see him making his way through turn number 11 right now, and coming in to 12. It's a situation for Jacqueline where he's trying to push on as much as possible as he comes through that right-hander, and just ahead, well, after what was that drive-through penalty, here is Paco Lara, who's come out in P14, and that is painful for Lara, who's dropped all the way down to P14 and has now got it all to do from the midfield. Can he find a way back into the top 10? Can he even creep into the top 5? That is the big question that we'll have to be waiting for an answer for over the remaining distance. But meanwhile, Jacqueline, you have to imagine, will be feeling quite uncomfortable right now. Jesse Monroe's breathing down his neck, as we are seeing that the track temperature has dropped by a degree, and that may be affecting some of the tyre temperatures and the tyre pressures that our drivers are experiencing right now. Then they're having to get some more temperature in the tyre to build those pressures up, or conversely, it may be the case that they just can't get the tyres switched on, and we might be seeing some sliding, as we do see this time. It's the case that Maliar has got Pastores much closer, and this is where the Ferrari driver will want to be. Now, he is going to lose out on this straight, there's no doubt about it, but you can see how he's not losing out as much anymore, because that BMW is punching a beautifully sized hole in front of him, as we're hearing that Gaz Williams has passed Ulrich for P5. We didn't quite catch that on camera, but focusing here and now on the battle for P11, we can see it's that case that Maliar stays on the racing line and Pastores not close enough, but Pastores trying to feint a dummy there, as we can say, make the way through turn number 8 and into 9. It did look as though there Maliar bouncing on the curve. Oh, goodness me, Pastores snap braking there, and as a result the car has just gone off circuit, but fortunately not into the wall. He's just simply drifted off, but those tyres are going to have a flat spot or two on them, and some quite nasty temperatures across them for sliding across. But Pastores there just not having enough downforce under braking on that rear end, and we just saw the rear go under braking into turn 9. But Pastores really pushing hard, and it's come back to haunting by looks of things. He now goes racing from P16 once again. But meanwhile, as we were saying just before that happened, Gaz Williams has found his way past Martin Ulrich. He's up into P5 right now, and the next man on his hit list, of course, is Walter Lux, as they make their way through turn 2 and up towards turn number 3. We've still got 47.5 minutes of this race to go. We're not even at the halfway point yet, but we are seeing Gaz Williams make a charge here. Now, in terms of lap times, our race leader, Andrés Mesa, on the last lap of 54.6. Harry Phillips, our P2 man, at 55.3. Ralf Piringer at 55.9. Walter Lux at 55.8. Gaz Williams at 55.8. So it would seem it's the case that for Williams right now, he's right up there in terms of the pace with the top 5. But whether he can make that break into P4 and potentially then go after Piringer for a P3, that will be the question you have to ask right now. And that'll be the challenge that he will need to overcome here. I'm sure he would love to be able to get onto that podium today, but he's got a long way to go with the fact that Lux is a second up the road and Piringer is a further 3 after Lux as he makes his way up. And we're hearing that Zafar Atos has come into the pits for his scheduled pit stop. He came in from P17 and he's making his way through the pit lane right now, and he's coming down the order, of course, to P19, but that is standard, what with the pit lane here being quite a long pit lane. Not as long as other circuits though that are on the calendar, but it is quite a lengthy one. As meanwhile we look at further down the order and we can see Paco Lara's made the move here on Velkoski in the drag race down towards turn number 8. In fact, Lara is absolutely flying after that drive-through penalty. I can tell you the last lap from Lara was a 55.8. I was going to say a 53's, goodness me, we're in qualifying settings again, but it is the case that 55.8 there from Paco Lara, and the McLaren driver not wasting any time coming back after that drive-through for what we believe was track limits. We have not heard anything to the contrary, and indeed we've had it there from Ultra Gaming, track limits confirming there in the YouTube chat. Now, as we continue to look around, we are going to just briefly answer a question from Low Power 73526 in the Twitch chat early on. How does the point scoring system work? So all of the points are awarded to drivers for their race results. There's no points for taking pole position or setting the fastest lap. The race win will give you 75 points, and we work it downwards effectively from there, point by point by point, as I understand it. And as a result, so a win is 75, second place 74, etc. So you can imagine if you have two drivers who continually finish P1 and P2, they're going to be very closely matched together, and then there are some gaps between the points as you go a little bit further down the order, but it's mostly sequential as far as I can remember. So that means there's a lot of points on the table for all of our drivers, and why racing every single race in the 8-round calendar is rather critical. But as we come away from talking about points to prizes effectively, we can tell you that right now, if you're looking for a battle which could earn somebody a little bit of a prize, Pastorius has made his way past Jesse Monrose and is now making his way after Andrew Jacklin, who is the best part of 1.5 seconds up the road. And I do think Pastorius has got the pace to go hunting once again as he makes his way down onto the long straight here, coming all the way down the back straight towards turn 8. But he's got the Aston Martin to deal with now, and he does have to think about the fact he has got a rather brutal BMW behind him of Monrose that would love to catch up. But meanwhile, looking for our midfield back up towards our leader right now, who seems to be in a little bit of a world of his own. Andrés Mesa will be comfortably enjoying this race right now, I can imagine. Although, to be fair, he is not turning the wick down, I can tell you that much. With that last lap being a 54.7 and the lap before it being a 54.9. Meanwhile, Harry Phillips over the last 2 laps, a 55.1 and a 55.8. It is the case that Andrés Mesa is pushing hard right now, the distinct GG driver, and he needs this, given the fact that his momentum and his form over the last couple of races has, whilst it's continually been, and I should point out, by the way, when we're talking about form for our top 2 drivers, you can see in that single camera shot there, neither one of them has finished a race outside of the top 4. They've practically both been on the podium every single race. Phillips has one more win compared to Andrés Mesa, but if it was to finish as it is now, they would be joint equal on wins as well. And that is how much these two have pushed one another throughout the entirety of the season. And you can imagine it, if you were thinking towards sort of Formula 1, it's the equivalent of Verstappen versus Hamilton. These two are literally at the top of their tier in this racing series right now, and are pushing one another to the absolute limit. Meanwhile, further down in terms of being pushed to the limit, we ride on board here with Oulton Park in P4, who you can see has got an ever-increasing presence of one big Bentley behind him, and that is the Bentley in the capable hands of Gaz Williams, who is chasing after him all the way down towards turn number 8. Now, as they charge up through the gears here, and indeed up towards top speed, we can see that Williams is well inside that slipstream right now, and really gaining on the straight here, and that Bentley straight line speed deficit, particularly in the top end RPM range, is being mitigated by the fact he's got that toe, and the McLaren's punching a hole in the air for him. And as they make their way through turn number 8 and up into 9, you can see how Lux just not feeling as comfortable anymore, I reckon, with the fact he does have Gaz Williams all over the back of him. As we can see, they make their way through 9 here, but he does get the better exit, and that's the strength of the 720S McLaren versus the Bentley Continental GT, is the fact he can get those stronger exits if he nails the apexes. He will be able to carry that apex speed as they make their way through in towards turn 11 and now up towards 12. But as they make their way around once again, Andrés Mesa once again at 54.7 on that lap. Hold up a second, as we see Harry Phillips at 55.0. I thought Phillips had made a mistake there. We're seeing a brief glitch on our timing screens, but it is the case, no mistake there, as Piringer on a 56 right now in P3. So Piringer has broken away from this battle, but it does look as though the drivers behind Piringer, so Lux, Ulrich and Williams, all set in mid-55s, and we could be seeing Piringer come back into this fight. Piringer is the best part of 3 seconds up the road, however, so they will need to sort of calm down the fighting to go chasing after the BMW driver. Where is the BMW driver? Here he is, and as the camera pans out, you can see the gap between P3 and P4, and they've got Eduardo Tripiana between them, who is a lap down as they make their way on around. But meanwhile, looking from these drivers to a little bit further down the order, we can see that Svain Pastorius still chasing after Andrew Jacklin. He's got a second to close down still. No way on through right now, and as we look back up to that battle for P5, we once again come through turn number 7 here, and I think Williams is a bit closer this time as we ride on board with the Bentley driver, and you can see it's still that 3/10 of a second window, and the two cars look so even on the straight. He is inching closer. You're not being deceived right now. If that McLaren looks as though it's getting slightly larger, you do not need to rub your glasses or your eyes. That is the truth. It's incremental gains here, all in that slipstream as they come roaring up towards turn number 8. He's not going to be close enough to go for a move this time, but he's the closest he has been, and as they make their way through turn number 8, you can see how much Williams has to back the car as McKenna's into the pits again. I think McKenna might be having some issues with that car and might need to box it. They might have to retire that car if it continues. We'll wait and hear from the distinct GG driver in terms of what we hear from down the paddock. As we can see, Williams here not able to close up as much that time through turn 9 and into 10, but they do have the back marker ahead of them. Now, of course, our back markers are expected to obey the blue flags and move out the way of the drivers on the lead laps, but could it be a way that Williams is able to gain, as we do see Lux there go very deep into turn 12. That's going to put him on a defensive posture here through 13, and that is what Williams will be looking for. He'll be looking for Lux to make a mistake, because one thing about that McLaren is when you get it wrong in that McLaren, it will feel not nasty for the next couple of corners. That car is so sensitive, much like the Porsche 911, it's so sensitive to mistakes, and right now Lux will feel that one mistake he has made, and we can see here that Williams is capitalising as much as he possibly can as they come roaring over the crest of 2 and head down towards 3. And as they come in towards the turn 3 corner here, you can see it's the situation where I think Lux will be hoping that he can catch Trippiani on the straight so he can get himself a toe, but as they make the way through turn number 4, he's bunched himself up into the back of Trippiani here, who is getting the blue flags being waved right now, but Trippiani's in a horrible place. He doesn't have anywhere to go until they make the way out of the corner here, and as a result, I think it is going to just about work out for Lux, but it's not ideal as they make the way on through, and you can see how Lux tucking into the slipstream for a brief period, but Trippiani's so close, and this is where Williams is going to strike, as we can see Ulrich here also having closed up a bit, but now Williams is right in the prime driving seat here as they make the way down towards turn number 8. It's a long way to go, of course, it's a long straight, and Williams will know that. He will inch closer and closer and closer, and as they come up towards the turning point, is he close enough? He's not there yet. He's almost there, but he's not quite able to get close enough to put the pressure on for the move, as we see all of our drivers come through, and Trippiani having to take a run off there, and I think that will be a track limits warning for Trippiani as they make the way on through turn number 9, and we can see how Ulrich has closed up with the fact they got bundled up behind Trippiani, who, to be fair to him, as soon as he could get out of the way, Trippiani did a fantastic job, but I think in Lux's mind right now there might be a few swear words about what happened there, and the fact that he's now got Gaz Williams all over his back as Ulrich there just gets a little bit of oversteer on the exit of 11, and as a result, no, the exit of 10 I should say, and not able to capitalise as they come through turn number 12, and as they make their way on through. I am hearing that Chris McKenna has had to box the car for a very long period of time. I think we may have our first retirement as Ralf Piringer is into the pits here just before the halfway point, so Piringer taking an early pit stop. Could we be seeing a bit of strategy here from the BMW driver who was P3? He's going to drop some way down the order, perhaps he's seen a gap and he's going to go for it in terms of the pit window as we look back to our battle right now for P3, and it does look as though Lux is under major pressure. But meanwhile, further down the order, we can see here Emil Blaine doing everything he needs to right now to finish inside that top 10. His next opponent is Fox. Markus Fox is only 3 seconds up the road from him, and he's got a nice gap as well of 2.6 seconds to Rainer Effenstedt behind. You can see in the rear of your picture, and Fabio Kinner is a further 1.5 seconds back after that. And I think you'll be hoping the McLaren driver can keep the other Aston Martin driver back. We see Zafaratos there moving immediately out the way, and Piringer, I believe, is just making his way out of the pits very shortly as we now hit the halfway point of the race. And I can tell you that this iteration of the run down the straight, Lux has been able to get away from Williams, so Williams not able to capitalise this time. We thought there might have been an opportunity here, but it wasn't to be as they both roar down towards turn number 8 for what is the 20th time of asking, as Max Malliart and also Jesse Monrose are both into the pits as well. But I do think it's the case that Chris McKenna has had to box the car. We may have had our first retirement, ladies and gentlemen, as we just see Monrose making his way to his pit box right now. But meanwhile, your question may be, well, where has Piringer come out here? I think Piringer may have nailed this pit stop, because look at this. He has got a gap to the next driver up the road, Sylvain Pastores, of in the region of 30 seconds and closing. The driver behind, Christian Ablas, 7.5 seconds. Piringer has bought himself enough room effectively to give himself a quarter of the lap breathing room right now, and that's exactly what he will have wanted as his teammate Malliar's also coming to the pits. I think they've seen a window and they're taking it, because if Piringer can now every lap from this point onwards, he can bring himself gradually back up to the likes of Phillips, and we see that Phillips has come into the pits here, ladies and gentlemen. So Phillips is responding as well, pitting at the halfway point, and I think we might be seeing some more pit stops very shortly as we see him make his way on through. Andrés Mesa has stayed out, and it's the same for Walter Lux as well. He stayed out there, and he's got Gaz Williams and Martin Ulrich deciding to stay in the train here. And as they make their way through turn number 2 and head up towards 3, it's one of those situations, I think, for Lux where he'll be just hoping that he's able to outlast them on circuit. And I think he'll do so. He'll go long compared to Williams and Ulrich, just so that way he can hope that he can come out and clear air come the end of the race, whereas they'll come out fighting amongst one another. Or will it be the reverse? Will we see Lux potentially decide to pit before they do? Well, if he's going to, I think he's going to need to think about it very soon, because as they come out of 6 and into 7 here, you can see Lux has not had the best of runs, and Ulrich is there with him as well now. As we look back, we can see the Bentley very prominent, but then we can also see a little bit of headlights on the Mercedes. As they make their way down towards turn 8, this time we can see Lux putting it in the middle of the road. He doesn't want to come onto the racing line just yet. I think he's very wary of the fact that Williams is close enough here to loom large and look threatening as they come up in towards 8. They'll be looking to go into that right hand and out. No change this time, but look at Ulrich there in the rear of the picture, the rearmost car, as they all come on through. You can see all of them literally milking it to the limit there, as it's Lux who goes a little bit deep into the corner, and as they make their way through 9, Williams on the inside, Lux on the outside, but Williams is only able to have a sniff at a potential P2 out on circuit right now because Lux is able to get his foot, and then we can see Ulrich now getting into the battle here, and as they make their way through turn number 9 and 10, it's the case that Ulrich's not close enough to make the full challenge, but Williams has got to be wary of the fact the M Technology driver is waiting in the wings and would love to become the main challenger versus Lux right now, and Ulrich has been playing it silent but deadly in the fact he has just been waiting for that opportunity. Now, will we see one of the 3 drivers decide to go for the undercut here? No, they've all decided to stay out once again. They're all going to keep on going round, but surely we've got to be thinking, especially in Ulrich's case, if he was to pit now and then come out in clear air, could he undercut the pair of them should they continue to fight one another, or would they both react immediately? That would be the big question. Now, where has Harry Phillips come out? He's come out in P12. He's got Piringer 10.6 seconds behind, or a little bit further back, no, a little bit closer I should say, about 9.6 seconds in the end, but Phillips has bought himself a nice amount of clear air, so he'll be going racing onwards. But meanwhile, as we look back to that battle for P2, it's the case that as they make their way through turn 5 this time, we're not seeing any change between the 3 of them as we jump on board with Ulrich here, the Mercedes driver, and this will give you a feel what it's like to be on board the Mercedes AMG, which will get a double tow down the straight. He'll be getting the much stronger tow for Williams' car, but he'll also be getting the distant tow of the Lux's car as they make their way on down. But I do think it may be the case for Ulrich that the Mercedes AMG that he's running has not been equipped for top speed here, because he is falling back quite a bit. Perhaps he's decided to go with a lot of downforce to help the car through the second half of the circuit, which wouldn't surprise me. He'll feel confident that he's got acceleration as they make their way up towards turn number 8 here, and as they come on through, we can see Williams there having a little bit of a shaky moment coming through the corner and having to get back on the brakes briefly just to steady the car, and as they make their way through 9, that shows you how much Williams is having to push that Bentley to put this pressure up on Lux. All 3 drivers are working it hard, and it's just these little indicators where they're having to do little adjustments on the brakes as they go, little taps to the brakes here where the car's starting to step out, where they're literally driving on the threshold of the available grip, and as they make their way through 11 now, it's the case that Lux looking at vulnerable once again here, but we've seen him in this position before. As we can see, it's the case, look at the 3 different lines they use. Lux takes a very deep line, meanwhile it's the case that Williams takes quite a firm line to the inside, and Ulrich somewhere in between through 12 and 13, and it's these different lines that are giving these drivers different strengths and weaknesses as they come out the corner. But Ulrich right now being a very patient man and just waiting to look for the move when the battle opens up between Williams and Lux. I'm sure he'll be looking for that opportunity. He's already had a shot at it versus Williams slightly. Will he be able to do it again? That's the big question as they make their way through turn number 2 on what is lap number 23. And meanwhile, further down the order, I can tell you that René Effenstedt right now, as we hear Sylvain Pastoris with a 5-second penalty has just been attributed to him. We'll come on to that. And I think it's a push to pass versus car number 46, which was Robert Velkoski. And we did see a little bit of door-to-door action earlier on. We did talk about that, and the stewards have frowned upon it, and as a result, given a penalty to Pastoris, a 5-second time penalty that will serve upon his pit stop. It is the case that Effenstedt right now is trying to close down Emil Blaine, who has got Trippier ahead of him, and it is the case that Blaine right now, to be fair, has been closing down Fox very gradually by a 10th here, a 10th there. Could it be the case that the Danish driver is able to bring down the Austrian come the end of the race? We will wait and see. These guys all pushing along, but meanwhile, as they make their way down the straight a little bit further up the road, we can see it's Lux versus Williams, and this time it's the case that Williams is close enough, and as the camera pans around here, you can see Lux goes initially defensive, and Williams just cannot find enough room alongside to go for it here. But as they make their way up into turn 9, he's going to look for it, but Lux shuts the door at the last possible moment there, and as they make their way on through here, you have to imagine that soon one of them's got to think about pitting, because I think in Williams' mind, he'll be thinking to himself that perhaps he's got a bit more pace if he was to be in clear air, and Ulrich the same. As we see they go side by side almost through turn number 10, and as they come out the corner into 11, I think it's the case that Williams now will have to look at Ulrich, who will have had the much firmer run out of 10 and up into 11. The M Technology driver just staying there, just looking threatening in the rearview mirror. He doesn't want to put a move on, he's just waiting, and this is horrible foreshadowing for what may be to come as Ulrich comes into the pits. He's going for the undercut, is Ulrich. He's decided to go in earlier than the other two as they make their way around on circuit, and I think for Ulrich this could be highly useful, because unless Williams and Lux react on the next lap, if they battle at all now and Ulrich is able to come out and put in an absolute solid lap or a solid couple of laps, Ulrich is going to jump these guys come at the end of the pit stops, because right now he has chosen to undercut. And meanwhile, further around on circuit, I can tell you that Harry Phillips right now, our P2 man before he pitted, is still down in P12. He has kept the gap to Piringer at 10.7 seconds, and as he makes his way on through here, he doesn't have anybody ahead of him who has pitted already other than back markers. As a result, Phillips is effectively P2 if everything was to work out as planned on the pit stop window. Of course, we do have Andrés Mesa to consider, who was the best part of 7 seconds up the road when Phillips pitted. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out, as we see Nesta Majid just behind in there, as we see Ulrich coming out of the pits, and Ulrich's actually come out in a bit of an interesting position because he's only just come out behind Phillips, and that, I must admit, is a little bit of a surprise. I would have thought he would have been further back here, but perhaps Ulrich has decided to go for an alternate strategy. Perhaps they haven't put new tyres on that car and he feels comfortable on them, and right now you'd have to imagine if that's the case, well, he's only the best part of 3 seconds off of Phillips. Could Ulrich here come in and surprise everyone with a podium? You never know what could happen. He's come out ahead of Piringer, who's the best part of 8.6 seconds down from him. So Ulrich has jumped Piringer here. This could be major. As meanwhile, speaking of major, we can see that Lux versus Williams again coming through turn at number, what is there? I believe turn at number 10. And indeed it is, as he comes for 11 now. It's a situation where Williams has not made the pass, but as they come up towards the pit entry point this time, will we see one of the two decide to jump into the pits, or will they both stay out again? Surely one of them must be thinking right now, where has Ulrich come out and what do I do about this? Was they come out the final corner? Do we see one of them jumping? No, neither of them jumping. They're both staying out there for a bit longer here. I think this is risky now, because if they're not aware of where Ulrich is, they will be aware of the fact that the M Technology driver has come out in P11 and close behind Phillips and ahead of Piringer soon, because this is going to be rough around the edges for the pair of them. As meanwhile, I can tell you that Markus Fox has been reeled in by Emil Blaine. On that last lap, Blaine was able to take out half a second on him, and the Fox Sim Racing driver right now, I must admit, ladies and gentlemen, it looks as though the front right bumper of that Porsche is a little bit worse. Well, I'm not sure if there's been some contact or it's just simply pickup on the front. I think it's actually a little bit more pickup rather than any damage, but Fox definitely looks like he's been through the wars in that car as he makes his way through turn number 4 right now, and Blaine is getting much closer, corner by corner, in the battle for what is P4 out on circuits. We see Evenstedt there behind him as well, only the best part of what is a further 2 seconds back from this battle. And as they make their way through 6 and 7, you can see 3 all drivers battling there for P4, all in the single frame. And as they make their way onto the long straight now, I think this is where Blaine will gain considerably as they come roaring down that straight once again. And as they make their way all the way down, we can see there Frank Lucid, I should say, in the Twitch chat saying hello. A raid from Chris McKenna as well in the Twitch chat. Wasn't happening for him tonight, so he's decided to retire the car. Hope to see the rest of the broadcast and cheer on Andrés for the team win. That's very kind of you there to raid the stream, CJ Mac or Chris McKenna. And as we take a look at our lead Distinct GG driver right now, he carries on past the pit entry, doing a solid job as Andrés Mesa. And I think right now, unless there's any spins in the tail, he is on course that potential win to make it 3 wins in 7 races and equal the win ratio of what is Harry Phillips right now, set us up for a cracking finale to the season. But as he makes his way on through, we could see that in the battle between Lux and Williams, there's still no change. But as they come through this time to complete lap number 25, surely one of them's got to consider pitting. No, they both stay out again here, and I think this could be the case. Well, I think Williams has actually backed the wick off very slightly. I'm going to put a theory out there. I think Williams is aware of what Ulrich may be trying to do, so he's decided instead to just tuck him behind for the time being and wait for Lux to make a mistake. Of course, whether that theory is right or wrong or not, we'll wait and see, but I think it might be the case that Williams has decided to change tact and calm it down a little bit and just see when he can make the offensive on Lux without having to force a move. I wait for Lux to make a mistake, go wide somewhere as they make their way through 4 and into 5. But meanwhile, speaking of drivers closing up, Blaine now within 7 tenths of a second versus Fox here, and Fox really starting to fall backwards in terms of pace as they make their way through turn number 4 and into 5. And as they come rip-roaring through here, we can see that he's all over the back. So we're going to have 2 potential attacks here down onto the long straight. As we can see there, this is the battle for P4 out on circuit as they make their way on through. And we're going to stay with this because I think Lux is safe this time in the long run. But as they make their way down right now, we look back from Markus Fox's car and we can see the Aston Martin Martin. It may look small at the moment, but it's going to gradually increase in magnitude as it gets closer and closer. And this is where the V8 opens up. As you can see, he's got a long run here as Blaine, and they're making their way down. They're halfway down the straight. Blaine's looking for the move on the inside, and as they head up towards turn number 8 right now, and the camera pans around, it's Blaine on the inside, Fox on the outside, and I think under braking here, it's the case that Blaine has got it done initially, but can Fox throw it back on the inside into turn 9 as Blaine comes off the exit curve of 8 very early there to go defensive to send the message through to Fox, look, you're not coming back through whether you like it or not. And that, I think, is Blaine up to P4 on circuit. Now, in terms of where they come out after the pit stops, we'll wait and see, but that is a case that Blaine is on a mission right now, and he's making his way up the field and further down. I can tell you that looking back to Harry Phillips, the Wild Things Racing driver, well, he's got Sylvain Pastoris, the first driver ahead of him to take on next, but remember that Pastoris has yet to pit. It's the case that Martin Ulrich, well, having come out the pits, his pace has not been that strong. On that last lap from Ulrich, it was a 56.3. Piringer behind him, who pitted much earlier and spent a lot longer in the pits, and I would presume that was to take a change of tyres. It was the case that Piringer a 54.6. I think for Ulrich right now, he decided not to go for the tyre change and may be feeling the pressure from it. As we're hearing that Fox and also Pacalara are into the pit for their mandatory stops in terms of that one stop they've got to tick off. Pacalara, of course, has already been in the pits for a drive-through penalty due to track limits and was in P8 at the time of pitting, so Lara's done a great job to get up to P8, but meanwhile, in that battle between Walter Lux and what is Williams, again, these two just inseparable, and they are not giving it up, the pair of them, as they make their way down the long straight once again here. And I can tell you that Emma Blaine has already broken away from Effin Straight. He's broken away to 2 seconds, and with Fox pitting, I think Blaine right now could be on course to look at a potential top 5 as we check in with the chat once again. And we can see there Frank Lucid saying that this track, Paul Ricard, makes for some fantastic battles, which it does indeed. And we can also see there we do have Matt Emmons in the Facebook chat saying remember to take a breath, but awesome job again. Thank you there, Matt. Do really appreciate that. But as all of our drivers make their way around on circuit right now, I don't remember being told in the commentary box that breathing was allowed, but we will try and squeeze in a little bit of breathing every so often when the racing does allow it. But as our drivers continue to make their way down, there's no sign yet of Andrés Mesa deciding to pit here. And I think, to be fair, the fact that he's got so much control over this race right now, he does have some back markers ahead of him. Christian Ablasser there just taking a little bit smooth to move out the way because he doesn't want Andrew Jacklin coming through, and that's why he was very hesitant. But it's the fact that Ablasser going off the line there has seen Jacklin come through. But remember, they are effectively in different races in the fact that Jacklin has already pitted, Ablasser has yet to pit. So I think there was the case that Ablasser didn't want to give up track position, but he's been made to because of obeying the blue flags, and Mesa was not going to just simply wait for him to rejoin the circuit coming out of 1 into 2. He wanted to come on through as quickly as possible. Now, of all the pit stops that have occurred, let's just check in with regards to where Markus Fox has come out. And I can tell you, the Wily Fox has come out in P12, the Austrian driver, as he makes his way down towards turn number 8 with 22.5 minutes to go. And as he continues to soldier on down right now, I think for Fox, it's one of those situations where he is now just looking to go on a mission. We'll keep an eye on his lap times, but he has come out behind Paco Lara, which is not a surprise, or is it? That's the big question. Well, Lara was actually behind him coming into the pits by a sizable margin, so that is a little bit of a shock to the system. But it's Paco Lara trying to do this race on a single set of tyres versus Fox, who may have gone for the second set. We'll have to wait and see how it all plays out between these guys as they make their way on through. But what I can tell you is that Effin Straight is into the pits right now, and he is taking that scheduled stop. But meanwhile, looking further up the road, Lux versus Williams, there is no change once again here. And I do think that what Williams has done, he's decided to back it off. Now, when I say that, what I mean is he hasn't given up the hunt for the position. It's just that he's backed it off for now to respect the fact that they're both racing drivers who've pitted and they have yet to pit. So what I think Williams is doing, he's essentially sending a message through as a sort of truce in a way to say to Lux, look, we'll carry on our fight once we've both pitted. Let's just run to a particular pace. If you run slower than that pace, I'm going to be right there to look for a move. If you make a mistake, I'll take the position off of you. But if you can keep to that pace, I'm not going to try and force a move on you, and therefore we're not going to lose any time. And to be fair, these two over the last 7 laps have been some of the most consistent lappers in the field, constantly in the mid 55s for Lux, and Williams in the high 55s. But of course, staying behind Lux, it's the case that he can just simply make up for that by running this close. But they have been very consistent, and the only other driver who's been that consistent has been Andrés Mesa, who is yet to pit, of course. As they make their way on down once again, we can see that Christian Ablasser down in P14 as he makes his way through. He does have what is there. I believe it is the case. We're seeing Effenstedt, who's in the McLaren there, who's looking to make the move on Jacqueline, and it does look as though the McLaren driver here has got an overspeed, a major overspeed building down the straight, and as they make their way in the long run down towards turn number 1, it's going to be a situation here where I think Effenstedt, after coming out the pit, is going to go for it nice and early here. He's going to go to the inside as they make their way up into the corner, and you can hear the car about to hit the rev limiter there. It's all the way up at the very end, running out that toe, and as they make their way into turn 8, Effenstedt up into P12. Will Jacqueline come back in with the Food Point Racing driver trying to take on the TUG Racing Esport driver into 9? No, he doesn't think about it, and I think he's just trying to play to the wise here and recognise he can come back at him later if there is an opportunity. But right now, just focus on keeping your head in the game as they make their way up into turn number 10. For them, it's the 28th time of asking, as meanwhile we're not seeing too many more pit stops at this point in time as we continue to look around the field, and it is a case that whilst the field has opened up a little bit in terms of the space between drives, we still do have big strategic questions to be asked, and in particular one big question to be asked as we see that Lux has actually got a major gap over Williams, and I think Williams has been stuck behind some traffic, perhaps in the form of Velkoski, and sees flashing his lights here quite furiously, and I do think that Williams may have been impeded a little bit, although I haven't seen it on camera. That would be for the stewards to look at, of course, if there is a feeling of impeded, as we see, hold on a second, a drive-through penalty for Walter Lux. I think he's hit the track limits, I would say, because that is very sudden, and we haven't seen anything to say that Lux has been nasty to anyone as he makes his way on through. And in terms of one of the questions there from Ultra Gaming, is there an Intercontinental Championship? Well, this is not an Intercontinental Championship at the moment in terms of the IGTC tracks, but you never know what could be in the future schedule for Next Gen Racing, so do keep your eyes out for what may be coming up soon. But Walter Lux, with a drive-through, releases Gaz Williams up into P2. Now, of course, we've still got the pit stops to go, but that is going to completely torpedo Lux's race, and that is the worst possible thing he could have asked for at this point in time when he's been running so strongly. But in the end, it's one mistake, I would say, and it has cost him massively, as this will mean that effectively now we're looking at Emil Blaine, who's P3 but yet to take his pit stop. Of course, he's got Max Maliar, who's a lap down. I think Maliar's just had a major moment there going into the note. He's just simply using the width of the circuit. I thought he was going off circuit for a brief moment there, my apologies. But as he makes his way into turn number 5 right now, Maliar in P16, he'll be chasing down Velkoski, who's the best part of 10.5 seconds up the road from him. We've still got 18 minutes to go, and the question is, where's Harry Phillips in all of this? Well, he's currently in P6. He's found his way past Sylvain Pastoris. Of course, Pastoris not really battling with him. Pastoris yet to pit, plus a 5-second penalty as well to add to his woes when he takes his pit stop. But Phillips chasing after leaders right now. He doesn't have anybody ahead of him who is on the same lap as him who has already pitted. He's after Lux, he's after Kina, he's after Blaine and Williams. They've all yet to pit, and there's Andrés Mesa, who's the race leader, of course, who has yet to pit as well. But given the fact there was a 7-second gap when Phillips pitted, I do think that so far Phillips has not closed that gap down enough yet to potentially be right there come the end of the racing. But we will wait and see as he makes his way down towards turn number 8 here. I'm just going to check in with the stewards here, ladies and gentlemen, to see whether there's anything about Lux's penalty. No, there is nothing in the stewards log, so I do think it is a drive-through penalty for track limits, and that is a disaster for Lux right now as he goes racing once again. And as we do check in, we can see here, well, I do have it confirmed, ladies and gentlemen. If you're wondering about, are we doing an Intercontinental Championship at some point, there is going to be one by the sounds of things, or at least I've just had that said. But more on that comes the end of the season, come round the break. We'll talk more about that then. We focus on the here and now, of course, as our drivers make their way racing around on the circuit, and as they continue to make their way through, it is the case as we see Ultra Gaming there confirming it. Indeed, I don't want to give the game away too much, but as we see our drivers make their way around right now, we look back to Ulrich versus Piringer, and Ulrich here has been closed up massively over the last 6 laps, and this I think is where Ulrich has not changed tyres in the pits. Meanwhile, Piringer has definitely gone for a tyre change, because Piringer came out so much further back compared to Ulrich and lost the position. But right now, you'd have to imagine that Piringer is on the mission to get on through. And as we ride on board here with the BMW M6 driver, who is going to try and come through very quickly, I think if he doesn't do it in the first half of the lap, he'll be doing it on the long straight, as we can see they come through turns 1 and 2, and now close he's having to run to the back of Ulrich. He's got so much more grip in the tank as they make their way through 2 and into 3, and you can think that Piringer will be thinking to himself right now, well, I need to go for the move, I'm losing lap time, but another part of him was saying, well, don't do anything silly, you're going to get him on the straight down to 8 surely. But of course Piringer right now, he's not racing Ulrich, he's racing the drivers ahead of him. He'll want to try and close up as much as possible for when it's the case that Williams, Blaine, Keener and also Lux all pit for their official pit stops. But as he makes his way right now through turn number 7, you can see that running so close behind Ulrich, he's got the toe here, and as he makes his way down to the straight right now, it will be the two German machines going toe to toe, BMW versus Mercedes. But you have to imagine this BMW is going to go all the way round the outside here on the long straight as they're halfway down, and as they head up towards turn 8, Ulrich's not going to make this easy, but in the end he tucks in behind to pick up the toe, and I think Ulrich has had a straight line speed deficit all the way around in terms of on this straight. Whichever lap we've been on, he seems to have got more downforce on the car than most, but as they make their way through the corner right now, you have to say that Piringer now getting through. I don't think Ulrich's going to be able to come back here, but I think at the same time Ulrich will just try and manage that car. He has been running in the region of half to 1 full second a lap slower than Piringer, but it's taken Piringer, to be fair, a long time to close up. To give you an idea of how long it has taken, Piringer pitted with 38 minutes to go. Ulrich, by comparison, I believe, if I remember correctly, pitted with 28 minutes to go. We are now 14 and a half minutes remaining. The pass was made at the 15-minute mark. It has taken 20 minutes effectively, if you do it nose to tail, in terms of Piringer's overall race. It's taken 20 minutes for him to close that gap back up and get it done. So Ulrich, to be fair, has tried to make this work, and it could still benefit him as they go on to lap number 32 and continue the way around. 14 minutes remaining right now, and you have to imagine, whilst there's not too many more laps to go, we're looking at approximately 8 more laps, including the one we're currently on. There's still plenty of racing ahead as we see Andrés Mesa here making his way through turn number, I believe that's turn number 12. As he comes into 13, it is the case that for the Spaniard, when will he pit? That's the big question we are asking. And place your bets, ladies and gentlemen. He's not coming in this time, I can tell you that much. As meanwhile, Gaz Williams, well, he's just continuing to put in the laps in the high 55s. And the Bentley driver here, I think he's just protecting the car and keeping it together, keeping it smart, keeping it simple, and not doing anything silly anymore. He knows, after seeing Walter Lux pick up that drive-through penalty for track limits, he knows how much that could spear into his race if he were to get it wrong as well. And Lux, by comparison, well, to show you where Walter Lux is, he's down here in P5, a long way back, as we see Trippiana there versus, I think that's Safratos, and Trippiana going very wide, and the rear of the car sliding into the corner there at turn 9. Well, he's made the move, but he's definitely made it off circuit based on what we saw. And I think it's the case that for Trippiana, if he doesn't rectify that in terms of make sure he doesn't do it again, we could be seeing a potential drive-through for Trippiana at this rate as he makes his way through turn and number 10 and up into 11 as he comes on roaring through here. But as he makes his way around, and right now it is a situation whereby for these guys, they're battling for every point they can take at the moment. They've got Harry Phillips just behind him, however, and I think Harry Phillips will be wanting these two to put aside their battle just for a brief while, so that way it's the case the Wild Things Racing driver can find his way on through as they make their way down towards turn 1. The blue flags are waving here, and we can see Zafaratos already starting to indicate, I think, that he's going to move off the racing line, or is he? No, in fact, they're all going to go through on that racing line once again. So Phillips right now, I think, will be starting to flash those lights as we do see Zafaratos move out the way there in the end. So not going to flash his lights this time, Phillips, but we will wait and see as he makes his way up towards Trippiana. But meanwhile, it is the case that further down we do have in the last of our running positions, of course, we did have the one retirement of Chris McKenna towards what was the end of the first half of the race. Our current runner last place at the moment is Nesta Majir from Rasket Racing, who after that drive-through penalty earlier on is now 8.5 seconds down on Andrés Zafaratos. So he is chasing after Trippiana and Zafaratos, but he's got a long way to go in order to do so. And he's still got 12 minutes to go, and most of the pit stops have been made with the drivers that he's fighting at the moment, so it's more of a situation where he's looking, as we do see our race leader come into the pits here. It's Andrés Mesa, who does come in then at the end of lap number 33 I should say. And what about Gaz Williams? Will he now decide to pit as well, or is he going to go the longest of everyone and try and just take one lap where he is the leader? Because Andrés Mesa has led every lap so far and would effectively be looking for a potential grand slam in terms of this race, in terms of qualifying on pole, setting the fastest lap. He owns that fastest lap right now, and yep, he does indeed, although Harry Phillips has come very close to dethroning him, and he's not going to get the Grand Slam because Andrés Mesa is going to see Gaz Williams come across that line, not pit, and Williams will go on to lead a lap of this race. But there's the gap, ladies and gentlemen. If you ever wanted proof, Andrés Mesa coming out of the pits right now, only the best part of what is about 4.5 seconds behind Gaz Williams, and I do think that Andrés Mesa has decided not to take a tyre change here, and I think the reason he's gone for this is because he's got so much of a commanding lead right now, and I think he's been protecting the car as well, that he feels comfortable on that set of tyres. He doesn't need to do anything more than that, as we are hearing that Oulton Park is into the pits from what was P5. That will release Harry Phillips up into P5. And as Lux comes on in, where are the drivers around him? Because we see Sylvain Pastorius, who's yet to pit. He's still soldiering on here, and Pastorius going very deep into this race. We haven't seen this from Pastorius for some time, but the Swiss deciding going long is the strategy today. And as he makes his way through turn 1, the Rinaldi racing driver here could be on with an outside chance of a top 10. He started in the top 10. He started P9. It went downhill quite rapidly down to P14. He's fought his way back into this race. Can't deny him that. And right now, you'd have to imagine that at the momentum he's going at, he could be on course to be back in that top 10 come the finale. As meanwhile, we can see there Tripiana under attack from Zafaratos as the two Porsche drivers make their way through turn 6 and into 7. And as we look back here from the Spaniard as they make their way through the left-hander, I think it's going to be the case that Zafaratos is going to be looking for the move here as they both come out of 7, and you can see already in the slipstream, we're not even a third of the way down the straight, but Zafaratos is inching closer. But he's got to that point now where I think he is starting to hit his maximum speed, or is he, as they now come into top gear. And as they make their way down, it's the case that Zafaratos is going to be made to go all the way round the houses in order to get this one done into turn 8. Is there going to be enough room for the two of them? That's the question. They're side by side, and this is the battle for P18, that every point's critical. And as they make their way through, you see Tripiana's gone deep where Zafaratos has cut back to the inside, and as the camera pans out, there's no way through for Zafaratos this time, but he's trying to put that pressure on. And as they come through, Tripiana goes very deep, and Zafaratos looks to the inside, but he's still there on the exit. Of course, that wide line is possible, and Zafaratos not able to get the move this time, but Tripiana under major pressure as they've now only got 9 minutes to go, and Nesta Mejia has closed up by 4 seconds over the last 3 laps versus these guys. That's how much they've been fighting one another and taking chunks of time out of one another as they make their way into turn number 12 and through it once more. But meanwhile, having had a taste of leading a lap right now as he makes his way through the corners, he's decided he wants another lap to add to his number of laps led in this series. And we can see that Gaz Williams right now making his way through turn number 6 and into 7. It is the case that the Bentley driver making his way on through here, as we do see Andrés Mesa gradually inching his way a little bit closer. But I do think that Andrés Mesa is one of those situations where he's not too worried. He will know that Williams has to pit, and as a result, he'll be just focusing on managing the car home. As meanwhile, it is the case that his main rival in terms of Andrés Mesa's main rival of Phillips, he's down in P5 at the moment, but Fabio Kina, Emil Blaine and also Gaz Williams have yet to pit. But you can imagine right now, if Gaz Williams was to pit and not take a tyre change, would he come out ahead of Phillips with only 8 minutes to go? So if we look at the end of this lap, we're looking at about 7 minutes to go. This could get very dicey, and on top of that, track temperature has come down by a further degree to 21 degrees Celsius, or degrees centigrade, however you want to say it. And as a result, it would seem right now that Phillips may be at risk of being jumped by the long stop of what is Gaz Williams in terms of long stop, just going very long in terms of that strategy. But we'll wait and find out here. We've still got some stories to tell in this one, as I can tell you that Zafaratos still battling with Tripiana here for P18. It's the closest battle out on the circuit right now as they make their way down. You can see Tripiana here going early defensive into 8 this time, I think to try and curb some of the momentum as he's cut the corner there. And I do think with 1 or 2 more, it will be a drive for if he continues to cut in that manner, because Mejia right now has closed up massively. The El Salvadorian behind is now within 1.7 seconds and closing like a bullet. And I think it will be the Aston Martin driver's day to close up to these guys as they make their way on through the left-hander here of turn number 10 and into 11 they come very shortly. As we see Fabio Kina is into the pits from P4, so this will release Harry Phillips, but we'll wait and see whether the Temir racing driver comes out. Now, based on the deltas here, I would imagine he could come out somewhere in the region of around Markus Fox Walter Lux, depending on how long he's going to be in the pits. If he just goes for a tyre change, he might be coming out around the Spaniard here, or just a little bit ahead of the Austrian and the 2 Austrians behind him. But we'll wait and see As meanwhile, Zafaratos continues racing here down towards 1 versus Tripiana, and we can see behind NXTGEN right on the back of these two right now, and looking to go racing and take 2 places come the very end of the race. But we can see it's Fabio Kina in the pit still. We're just going to take a look back, and he is emerging from the pit lane, so this is critical. Fox is just coming out the final corner and across the timeline. I think Kina here has decided to not change tyres, and as he makes his way down towards turn 1, we should see Fox in the camera very shortly as the camera will pan round. In fact, Fox is still 2 seconds back. There's Fox in the rear of your picture. So it is the case that Kino has come out and jumped Fox. He's jumped Lux. Of course, Lux for that disastrous drive-through penalty. But Kino has come out in P8. He has made the long stint work. And this is a surprise, but a welcome one to be sure. As we still got more pit stops to go. And could we see Gaz Williams suddenly jump himself up onto that podium? And Emil Blaine as well. Where will he come out in all of this? As we see Tripiana has dropped behind Zafaratos and Magia. We didn't see what's happened, but it is the case that he's lost out. And now it looks as though Magia is going to go for the move on Zafaratos up into turn 8 here. This is the battle for P18, and as they make the way up into the corner, you can see Magia looking very close, but he's not looking for the move yet. He hasn't got enough time of day to go for the move, but he will look for it down. Oh, goodness me, as we see there Tripiana going wide once again, but you can see Zafaratos goes a bit deep, and meanwhile Magia makes the move on the inside. A nice move from Magia to take P18. I think he's got it done as they make the way up towards 10. He's just simply balanced the car out very well, as you see Zafaratos really struggling now for that grip as Emil Blaine is into the pits from P3. Now, where is this going to bring him out? Well, Phillips is coming past already. Meanwhile, Piringer is the best part of for Phillips, a further 20 seconds or so down. And then we've got Ulrich, who's only a second behind and actually maintaining the gap here to Piringer, interestingly enough. I thought Ulrich may have dropped further away, but it looks as though, in fact, Piringer now is struggling to get the pace down. And as a result, I do think that Blaine's going to come out behind these guys somewhat. But then you've got Paco Lara coming out the final corner now. And Emil Blaine, well, he's coming out of the pits and he's gone across the limiter line, so he's going to be getting back up to speed right now. And I think this could be the case that Blaine is going to jump Lara, who's just coming up towards turn 1. Blaine's come out in P6, and to be fair to him, given the pace he has been showing before he pitted, with Ulrich and Piringer only 4.5 to 5 seconds up the road, if they were to battle at all on that final couple of laps, it could be the case that Blaine may be on for a shot at P5. We'll wait and see, as we do still need to know what's happening with Gaz Williams, who's making his way right now. He's still yet to pit, much like Christian Ablasser in P14, who's just behind him in the camera shot right now, albeit a lap down. But you have to say, Gaz Williams has done an absolutely brilliant job for turning up so late into the qualifying session to put the car on what was the 4th row of the grid and now be leading the race, albeit he will have to pit. And you can see Andrés Mesa is following him on through as they make their way through turn number 12 and into 13. It is the case that Andrés Mesa will retake the lead. We know that's got to happen as Williams is into the pit at long last. He's gone 72 minutes before his pit stop. Now, where is Harry Phillips? That is the big question. Well, I think Phillips right now is making his way through turn number 11 here. I think he will just about be close enough to jump ahead of Gaz Williams, or will he? As we see Phillips here makes his way through turn number 12 into 13, and as he comes into the right-hander here, yeah, I have to say this is going to be a very close one as we see Williams parked up there and taking his stop. Meanwhile, Phillips is going to come on through. I think he's done enough, Phillips, to get back ahead of Gaz Williams. As you see, yep, he has cleared Gaz Williams, who's leaving his pit box already. Here is Piringer. I think Gaz Williams is going to jump up to P3 because Piringer's not even into the final corner. He is now, but here is Gaz Williams coming out of the pit lane. He's about to exit on the pit limiter, as we do see that that's Christian Ablasser as well, just ahead of him, I believe. But where is Piringer in all of this? Well, Piringer has just crossed the timeline. He's nowhere to be seen, Piringer. So Gaz Williams, by running very long, running the longest of anyone, including Ablasser as well, the joint longest, he's jumped up to P3 in what has been a masterstroke, but he's got 2.5 minutes now to hold on to that position, as we see Nesta Magia here, who is trying to... Oh, goodness me, and Magia there with contact by the looks of things on the... Well, I think that was contact there on the back of Ablasser, coming on to breaking it to turn 3, as Ablasser was trying to give Magia... was trying to give Williams the place up effectively under blue flags, but you can see Magia's backed the car off massively there, but that was a nasty moment to be sure, but one to learn from the rookie drivers. They make the way around, and you can see here that he's backing off completely to let Ablasser through, and Ablasser's flashing his lights, I think, to say, I'm coming through now, thank you for waiting, as they make the way on through. But that was a moment which could have been very hairy for Gaz Williams if it had worked out differently, as we now only have 1.5 minutes to go, and you can see Emil Blaine making his way on through as well. I do think that Magian may have some damage to that car as well that is compromising his pace. But meanwhile, with one more lap, he's gone on to the final lap, ladies and gentlemen, the 39th tour of the circuit. Andrés Mesa is in control of this race. He is 27. And I repeat, not 20, not 25, 27 seconds clear of Harry Phillips right now, though Phillips is closing that gap down gradually lap on lap. Andrés Mesa has absolutely dominated this race, and now with only one lap between himself and his third win in the series, equaling the 3 wins achieved by Harry Phillips, you have to imagine that right now Andrés Mesa will be smiling and thinking at long last it has come back after what was a difficult day at Oulton Park a week ago. It's now the case that he is coming back onto that top step, as Phillips meanwhile has got enough of a gap to Williams, as we can see here. Gaz Williams going onto that final lap, Piringer just behind him, the best part of 2.5 seconds or so behind, but I think Williams is going to be safer. I don't think he has to panic too much about being hunted down come the final lap, as we see Emil Blaine in P6 right now. He's got Paco Lara who's chasing after him here on that final lap, so we could see an inversion here in terms of the swap in the P6 and P7, and Lara is flying, I can tell you that. That last lap, Emil Blaine a 57.1, Paco Lara a 56.2 as they make their way on around the circuit. But as they come on through into turn number 3, we can see our race leader is already making his way through turn number 9, and to be fair, he deserves the camera on him, because this has been an absolutely solid drive, and this is why he is going to remain our championship leader come the end of this race going into the season finale. He nailed it in qualifying. He didn't let the fact he wasn't the fastest in the final practice session phase him, and as he started the race, he started it as he went on to finish it, dominant in every single way. And as he comes out the final corner, it will be the Spaniard of Andrés Mesa from Distinct GG who takes the win at Paul Ricard in round number 7 of the championship by a major margin in the end of 27 seconds. A phenomenal drive from the Spaniard, as meanwhile, whilst it wasn't to be a win today, as he makes his way through turn number 12, you have to imagine he'll be pleased that it wasn't a case of being off of the podium, that he was able to get into the P2 at the start, because he'll come through the corner knowing that he will be able to take the fight to the finale. It's Harry Phillips and Wild Things Racing. The Briton comes home in P2 in the end. A great drive from Phillips, as behind him, perhaps the drive outside our winner, that is the drive of the day today, it's Gaz Williams. As he makes his way through the final corner, he used the long stint to jump the field, and he's come home in a P3 for all his efforts. A brilliant drive from Gaz Williams, as we see Ralf Piringer coming home in P4. A good drive from the BMW driver once again, and then we have got Martin Ulrich with another top 5 finish. He'll be very happy with that one. P6 in the end is lost to Emil Blaine, literally at the checkered flag. Paco Lara just drag races his way across the line in the end to P6 ahead of Emil Blaine in P7. Markus Fox comes home in what I believe is a P8 in the end. A good drive from the Austrian. Fabio Kiener making the long stop work and the long stint work and coming home in P9. And then to round off our top 10, I believe it is Rainer Effenstedt, one of the 2 TUG Racer Esport drivers in the McLarens, who comes across the line to complete our top 10. A brilliant drive from the Austrian. And whilst it was the case that his teammate had that disaster with the drive-through, you cannot take away from Lux what was a very competitive drive, and he will look to come back for that top 5 in the season finale as he's crossed the line right now. But brilliant racing from everyone, and indeed a fantastic penultimate round of the season, as I believe we do still have some more drivers to come on through, but I think most of our drivers have now been accounted for, unless I'm very much mistaken. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, give us a brief breather, and we'll be back in approximately 5 minutes or so for the post-race podium interviews. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back then. Apologies for the slight delay. There's been a little bit of confusion as to who finished P6 over the race distance, but I've had it reconfirmed to me that it was not Paco Lara by the sounds of things, instead it was Emil Blaine picking up the P6 right at the end there. So congratulations to both drivers, but it's the case that Emil Blaine took home the coveted P6. But looking from P6 now up towards our podium, we're going to kick off our post-race podium interviews, of course, with our race winner, and let's bring the jovial Spaniard of Andrés Mesa into the interview box. Hello Andrés, can you hear me?
Yes, hi Paul.
Andrés, a brilliant drive from yourself tonight from start to finish, qualifying and the race. You absolutely dominated it. How does it feel to have taken the win at Paul Ricard?
It feels great, yeah. Thank you very much.
In terms of just breaking it down for us, we saw in the initial practice session that you weren't the fastest out there, but it seemed as though you were saving a lot up for qualifying. Just take us through qualifying, because I think it was your first lap, which was that 53.2, and, well, nobody could even match it.
Yeah, I knew I could hit those times, but I didn't do any quali runs in the previous practice. That's why. So yeah, it was the first lap of the quali session, and then the last one. I think I improved a little bit.
Yes, you did. You improved to a 53.0 right at the end. I do have to ask, were you targeting a 52.9 on that lap? Because you were absolutely blistering on that final lap.
Yeah, it would have been nice to put a 52 there. But yeah.
And then looking from qualifying to the race, you had, I think it was Paco Lara starting alongside you on the front row. Was anything going through your mind? Because you've normally been alongside Kieran Prendergast, alternatively Harry Phillips. But to see Lara alongside you, did that make you think, okay, it's a bit of an unknown? Or were you just confident you could make the break early on?
I thought, to be honest, I thought I was gonna lose the lead because the Aston is always slower off the line. But I don't know how the two McLarens didn't get a good start either, and Harry got the P2 straight away.
And then from that point onwards, having held on to the lead come the end of lap 1, we saw for the best part of 10 laps yourself and Harry Phillips exchanging lap times. Were you looking to try and break away, or was it the case that you were waiting for him to make a mistake? So there was this one tiny moment we saw coming through turn 8 where the rear end of Harry's car just seemed to slide a little bit, and that was the end of his chase.
Yeah, he was matching my pace at the beginning, yeah. And the thing is, I didn't know what strategy was he on at all. Yeah, I was trying to break away, of course, and I had quite an advantage on this track on the back straight because the Aston is much faster than this Bentley.
And with that in mind, when you saw that you were starting to open that gap up to Harry Phillips, did it change your approach to the strategy, or was the plan always to go very long on that one stint and then just come in for that 1 litre of fuel?
Yeah, that was the plan I had, yeah, in mind.
I see, but it worked out brilliantly in the end, and I do have to ask, coming to the end of the race, when you saw the gap when you came out the pits, was that the gap you were expected, or was it a case of there was a much bigger smile on your face than what you expected?
Yeah, and I didn't expect that big gap. Then I've been speaking to Harry for right now, and he's told me he changed the tires, and I did not at all.
And we definitely did see a lot of that up and down the field in terms of drivers who took new tyres versus drivers who did not. It seemed to work out, and much like what we saw with Markus Fox last week at Oulton Park. Just take us through, in terms of managing the tyres, just keeping the tyres alive for 75 minutes at Paul Ricard. What does it take?
I don't know. Bit of finish setting. Just being careful and not over pushing. That's all. I think the Aston is brilliant for that. It just takes care of the tires. Like no other car, I believe.
Oh, it definitely looked that way in terms of the way you were gliding around the circuit. And now looking from Paul Ricard to the Nürburgring in a week's time, the season finale. You are our championship leader still. You've opened that gap up to Harry Phillips very slightly. What can we expect from yourself at the Nürburgring circuit?
So I have to get a P2 at least, haven't I?
Yep, effectively.
Should be. Well, we'll see. It's gonna be interesting.
Well, it's definitely one we're looking forward to. But congratulations on the win today. A brilliant drive from yourself, and we look forward to seeing you in a week's time at the season finale.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. I'll see you next week.
That there, Andrés Mesa, the number 91 driver from Spain from Distinct GG, putting in an absolutely colossal performance in the penultimate race of the season. And I think there he might just be a little bit out of breath with regards to driving. And whilst he was protecting the car, as he was saying, they're protecting the tyres in particular, as well as things as well, whereby as he was going deeper and deeper into the race, I can imagine that he probably couldn't believe when he came out of the pitch just how much of a gap he had over the field. But still, to bring it home like that just goes to show that he definitely, this championship means a huge amount to him, and he'll be looking forward to that opportunity to seal it in the season finale. Remembering he's only got to finish P2, he just needs to finish behind Andrés Mesa. But going from our race winner now to our P2 man, let's catch up with Harry Phillips and hear his perspective. Hello Harry, can you hear me?
Yep, can you hear you, Paul?
Another cracking drive from yourself, Harry. A P2 this time around at Paul Ricard. How does it feel?
Yep, it feels pretty good. It's the best I could have managed today. I mean, there was no chance I was going to get a win. I knew that as soon as I saw qualifying happen as well. But yeah, P2. I mean, it seems a common theme for this championship for me, but you know, it still feels good either way.
Well, when you say that, it's a case that I think it wasn't all perhaps going your way in terms of qualifying. We saw you qualify a P4 with two McLarens finding their way between yourself and Andrés Mesa. Just take us through qualifying. Was that qualifying the best you could have done, or was there something still left out there?
There was at least a good couple of tenths in me, but to be honest, the Bentley, I mean, it might be a case of picnic, as in problem in the chair, not in the car. But it just does not feel good at this track. And the straight, I mean, I lose about 5 to 6 kilometers an hour on the straight alone when I've not got the toe. It was really hard, and it didn't feel very stable at all, even throughout the race. I mean, I'm pretty sure I had a really big moment very early on.
Yes, we'll come to that moment shortly, because we did speak to Andrés Mesa about that, and we'll come back to it yourself. But before that, start of the race, we have to wonder, because we didn't quite see what happened. You had an absolutely phenomenal start. We definitely call that you going around the outside of both Paco Lara and also Walter Lux into turn 1. Was it the case that you just had the best start of all of them, the McLaren's bogged down? Because it seemed as though, particularly in the case of what was Paco Lara, he seemed to just find a box of neutrals at the start of the race.
Yeah, well, I don't know what strategies the McLarens were on, but I know Mesa was running over 100 litres in the car at the start, because obviously he was going long. My strategy was to run half a tank, so I was running 58 litres at the start line. So the start for me was always going to be like a rocket ship compared to the others. I could have maybe pushed it and kept it around the outside and taken P1 from Mesa, but he would have got me on the straight anyway. But yeah, that was always the strategy. Get as far ahead as those McLarens as possible. Try and keep it with Mesa. I mean, just looking at the back straight, considering I had 60 or more litres less than Mesa, and I had the toe, and I still was losing him on the straight, it was extremely frustrating.
I can definitely appreciate how you felt, but we saw just how much you were pushing to stay within the toe. And then I have to come on to that one moment through turn 8 where the rear of the car just seemed to step out massively as you went through the apex. Just take us through what happened there, because after that it was a case, I think the gap had just opened up through that one moment.
Yeah, the car feels like it's about to do that every single lap I go through. It's a very tricky thing, the balance of the car I've got. I mean, it could just be something wrong with my setup, but yeah, it was that was the problem corner. It was a huge oversteer on the entry to that corner, and then understeer through the next turn 9, turn 10, turn 11. So yeah, I mean, luckily I only had one of those moments in the race, but and I got it done early on. Yeah, the cold tires didn't help either. I had really cold tires at the start.
It was a very well caught moment. I did wonder if you played cricket in your spare time and acted as a fielder, given the way you caught the car there, but it was fantastic to see you keep it together. It could have been absolutely cataclysmic, but coming from that moment to when you pitted quite early compared to the majority of the top 10, and obviously putting more fuel in the car, and I believe, unless I'm wrong, it was a change of tyres as well?
Yep, changed the tyres. 30 minutes in, the tyres felt like they were cooked. Again, it could just be me or the setup or whatever, but it felt so bad, the car at this track, and yeah, so taking tyres was essential for me. It just if I had gone the long stint like Mesa did, Christ, I think it might have been a case of lapping in the 58s. It would have been horribly slow.
Well, you made it work, particularly towards the end of the race, but I have to ask, did you at any point start to think, seeing the likes of, say, Emil Blaine, Gaz Williams and company staying out for so long, that they may potentially jump you through going long and having that really short pit stop?
Yeah, that was a concern. I was hoping that maybe they'd start slowing down like I knew I was going to. After some testing in the practice session, I did a full stint to see how it'd feel. I knew that I'd start dropping off in pace really quickly. I was hoping the others would have the same problem. I think they did, or either that, they did change tyres as well. I know a fair few people did change tyres, like Piringer behind me. He changed tyres. He was 10 seconds behind me when I went in, and 10 seconds behind me when I came out. But yeah, it was. I was staring at the overall gap spreadsheet to make sure that my times were okay. I was really pushing my times when I came out my pit stop, hoping to get low 54s, mid 54s, and I was trying to keep consistent. I think at one point I had 54.5, 54.6 for about 10 laps straight, and at that point I felt pretty comfortable that I was going to jump everyone.
And in the end it did work out with the P2, and now looking ahead to the season finale, you've got to essentially win it, or at least finish well ahead of Andrés Mesa. How are you feeling for the Nürburgring?
Yep, I think either way, however it finishes, it's going to be incredibly exciting between me and Mesa. I mean, there is probably, I think, maybe 6 points between us now, if I'm not mistaken. So it's going to take a bit of a miracle for me to pull out the championship win now. I think even if I was to win, Mesa will be right behind me anyway. So it might already be decided, but it's too early to say now, but it's going to be exciting.
Indeed, anything can happen until the checkered flag in a week's time, but once again, congratulations on the second place there. A brilliant drive from yourself, and we look forward to seeing you at the German circuit in a week's time.
Yep, cheers Paul.
Well, hearing there from the number 26 car of Harry Phillips, the driver, very happy with his performance today, and in his own words, of course, the best he could have got out of today given the performance of his Bentley versus the cars around him. And I think that a little bit of surprise that you could hear from Harry Phillips, particularly at the way that he seemed to lose the pace on the first set of tyres compared to a lot of drivers going very long on a set of tyres and not changing their tyres, just coming in right at the end, such as Andrés Mesa, for example, and also Gaz Williams. But it would seem that some drivers have got that better setup or that better balance at Paul Ricard compared to what Harry was experiencing. But still, we now move ahead to the Nürburgring circuit, and he'll be looking to bounce back and take that win and potentially take that championship right at the end. But now we must come from our P2 man to our P3 man, and that is Gaz Williams, who we introduced to the interview room for the first time. Hello Gaz, can you hear me? Hello Gaz, can you hear me?
Right. Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. I don't know what happened there.
That's absolutely great. So, firstly, welcome to the interview box. Your first time fishing on the podium in this series. A P3 today out there. How do you feel?
Yeah, nice one. Yeah, feels great to go on a podium. In the first season as well. It's a bit of a tough race, though, to be honest with you. Just wasn't sure what the car would be like at any point during the race. Yeah, wasn't great at the end, I can tell you that. The tyres were just completely gone.
I must say, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but you seem to join qualifying quite late into the qualifying session. We saw you coming about 7 minutes remaining.
Yeah, I only just got back. Wasn't sure if I was going to make it. Luckily I did, because obviously otherwise would have been starting at the back. So managed to... I actually got 2 laps in, but I invalidated the first lap. So then I just thought, you know what, I've just got to play it safe, get a lap, and see where that puts me. And I think it was P7, was it?
It was indeed. It seemed to be the lap that came out of nowhere, but put you right on the 4th row, and then just take us through the start of the race with a bit of a scramble of a lap. Good start from yourself, right in the battle for P5 from the outset. Was the aim initially to make huge gains, or just gradually build on the guys in front?
To be honest, I always try and get through the first lap without any contact, because obviously, you don't want to spend time in the pits, do you, sort of thing. So, if the gaps are there, you try and go for them. But yeah, the first couple of corners, it was not too bad. I think I was around the outside on one of the corners, which cost me, I think, a position on the straight, was it? But once I got stuck behind, I think, was it Mercedes ahead initially? But yeah, he made a mistake.
Martin Ulrich.
Yeah, he made a mistake. I think it was at, what was it, turn 10? And I managed to sneak up the inside of him. But then I just couldn't get past the McLaren. It's so quick down the straight. Even when I was tucked up behind him, I was only just matching it at the end of the long straight. So, yeah, it wasn't great.
I mean, we did see for the best part of what must have been about 15 plus laps, the battle between yourself and Oulton Park that never seemed to end, and Martin Ulrich trying to sneak in there as well every so often, particularly through turns 9 and 10. Just take us through in your mind, whilst it may not have been the most enjoyable battle in terms of lacking the speed of the straight, but that whole dynamic of one moment trying to look for the move on Lux, and then the next minute having to watch out for Ulrich trying to make a cheeky move on yourself.
Yeah, it was really enjoyable, actually, because obviously I knew I probably couldn't get him on the straight, so I was trying to find some other areas where he maybe wasn't quite as good, and he seems to be struggling a bit through turn 1 slightly, turn 2, and then turn 11, that long right, I would say was gain a bit through there, but he just had a bit more grunt on the exit, so I couldn't really capitalise on it. And yeah, it was a nice little battle though. There was a moment where I think it was coming to lap a Porsche down the back straight, and I'm not sure he pulled over to the right, but I'm not sure he's seen, obviously I was there, he let the McLaren through, and he pulled back over onto the racing line right as well, right, I think pretty much up the outside of him. So I had to take to the runoff. So that was but then I think the McLaren pitted that lap, was it, because he had a drive through, was it, I think. And then, but after I went on to the runoff, the tyres were completely gone. Really bizarre, so I don't know about what happened there. But yeah, I just planned on just try and take them all the way to the end, try and see how many positions I could gain, because I did think a few people were changing tyres in the pits, to be honest.
And we were wondering whether you were going to make that tyre change, and when you opted not to and came out in P3 with just enough of a gap between yourself and the guys behind, was it a case of literally head down to the finish, or was there a bit of a grin starting to emerge in your face with regards to, I've just jumped myself onto the podium?
Yeah, I wasn't sure exactly where I was going to come out. I didn't think I'd come out on the podium. I thought it'd be about P4, maybe P5, but yeah, I did think he'd changed tyres. BMW, wasn't it, behind? Because he was gaining quite quick, and I thought he's got to have changed tyres. So and there was only like one lap left, sort of thing. So I thought, as long as I don't spin it, sort of thing, I should be able to hold on to the podium. But yeah, it was a pretty fun race, sort of thing. Even though obviously it wasn't much overtaking. It's just the battle, isn't it? When you battling cars all the time, sort of thing.
Oh, most definitely. And it made for some cracking viewing, I can definitely tell you that. And now looking forward to the season finale in a week's time, off to Nürburgring. How are you feeling for the 2-hour super endurance race?
Looking forward to it, to be honest. not done Nuremberg on the PC, so it's going to be interesting. I've done a bit more on the console side, so it's all new coming over to the PC sort of thing. But yeah, it's should be an interesting race. Hope it's a bit easier on tyres than what this one was, but I can't see that being the case.
We'll have to wait and see in the regards to the tyres, but until then, we look forward to seeing you out on the circuit in a week's time. Congratulations on the 3rd place, Gaz Williams, and well, we'll see you in a week.
Awesome, thank you.
Here and there from Gaz Williams, his first podium in the series, and a driver who's really come to form since joining midway through the season. A fantastic drive there for P3, and in his own words, a bit of a back and forth battle between himself, Walter Lux, and also Martin Ulrich, which wasn't really going anywhere as such, but it was a great battle still, despite no places really being gained or lost. But in the end, deciding not to change the tyres and just simply opt to run that last couple of laps, or that last lap on the old tyres still. It worked out with Piringer, who was on those fresh tyres, just not able to close enough of the gap down to make a move happen right at the end. With that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our post-race podium interviews and our schedule for tonight. Thank you very much for watching, as always. And if you do want to know more about the NextGen Racing community, why not check us out at our official racing website, that's nextgenracing.co.uk. Alternatively, you can go to our official Facebook group, that's NextGen Racing on facebook.com/groups/NextGen Racing. Also, a massive thank you to our partners without whom this would not be possible. Firstly, the SimGrid, you can check them out at thesimgrid.com, and Coach Dave Academy, that's coachdaveacademy.com. And as mentioned to all 3 of our podium finishers there, we now look ahead to a week's time. Put the date in the calendar, the 26th of October. It's a Tuesday, it's the Nürburgring, we're heading to the season finale and the 2-hour super endurance race. You won't want to miss it, because remember, the championship is on the line between Andrés Mesa and Harry Phillips, and I'm sure with the results that have been scored tonight behind them both, in terms of in the top 5, it couldn't be tighter for the rest of the top 10. You want to be there because it is going to be fast, it's going to be furious, and anything can happen come the checkered flag and the time we bring the curtain down on the European GT3 Series Season 2. But we have been NextGen Racing. I have been Paul Walsh, also known as TX1 or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, thank you very much for watching, and remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, from all of us, remember to stay on track. Good night.